Chapter 219. Huofeng, this consort will definitely accomplish what I promised you. Now that we're about to leave the imperial palace, the people and matters there will no longer have anything to do with this consort. From now on, this consort will do as you said and return to being myself. Huofeng. This consort hopes that you can see all of this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wang Qinruo slowly hugged Huofeng in her arms as she sobbed. Inside Pure Flower's palace, Yarrow Sulwan sat stiffly on a chair. Her eyes were piercingly cold and her heart felt like it was being clenched by someone. Right at this moment, Yi Junqing suddenly appeared in front of her like a ferocious tiger descending the mountain. Yarrow Sulwan, why did you have to kill Morshine? She's your older sister. Why? Yi Junqing glared at Yarrow Sulwan with bloodthirsty eyes. His throat felt like it was being gripped by a sharp blade. Every time he moved, it felt like his throat was being scraped by a knife. Hidden beneath the sharp pain was extreme anger. Older sister? She's just a bastard. What right does she have to be this consort's older sister? What right does she have to be the empress? That position belongs to this consort. Yet she occupied it for so long. Yarrow Sulwan abruptly stood up, her sinister eyes flashing with a dark green light. You're admitting it. You're admitting that you took Morshine's child and personally threw him to his death. Yi Junqing's rationality completely collapsed. The immense sorrow made him seem like a completely different person. Yes, I was the one who took that child. I was the one who threatened her to sign the testimony. I was also the one who personally threw that child to the ground, making him a bloody mess. Ua! Yarrow Sulwan roared furiously. In the next second, Yi Junqing's hand tightened around her throat. The suffocation came so suddenly that she didn't even have time to react before her body was suspended in the air. Return my Morshine. You deserve to die. Yarrow Sulwan, you truly deserve to die. Ah! Yi Junqing's eyes were bloodshot. This was the first time he had acted against a woman, and also the first time he wanted someone to disappear from this world so badly. He tightened his grip around Yarrow Sulwan's neck, his eyes as cold as the wind. Just as Yi Junqing exerted more force, a black shadow flashed by. In the blink of an eye, Yarrow Sulwan had already collapsed to the ground and was coughing violently. Meanwhile, Yin Shui was standing calmly in front of her. Out of the way! Yi Junqing charged at Yarrow Sulwan like a mad lion, but Yin Shui stopped him. Master doesn't want Yarrow Sulwan to die. Wang Yi, please calm down. Yin Shui's expression was as calm as a lake, her voice solemn and firm. You know what she did. She killed her own nephew and forced her own sister to her death. If she didn't die, where was the justice in the world? How could Morshine's spirit be at peace in heaven? Yi Junqing pointed angrily at Yarrow Sulwan, his eyes bloodshot. Bah! That kind of bastard isn't fit to be this consort's older sister. The child she gave birth to is also a bastard. Yi Junqing, come, kill this empress. If you dare to kill Ben Gong, that page of Yarrow Morshine's testimony will be seen by everyone. At that time, the illicit affair between you and Yarrow Morshine will be known by everyone. At that time, everyone would know that Yarrow Morshine wasn't fit to be the empress. She had an affair and even secretly had a vile spawn with you. She deserved to die. She's just a slut. Yarrow Sulwan roared crazily and laughed without restraint. However, hidden behind that laughter was a bone-piercing chill. Yarrow Sulwan. Yi Junqing was so angry that he felt a fishy taste in his throat. He abruptly spat out a mouthful of blood that splattered all over Red Spider Lily. Wang Yi. Yin Shui hadn't expected Yi Junqing to be this angry. She immediately sealed Yi Junqing's acupuncture points, causing him to temporarily lose consciousness. Then she glanced coldly at Yarrow Sulwan before turning and disappearing from Pure Flower's palace with Yi Junqing. You sure had a good time cursing. Are you satisfied now? Yarrow Mo Wn leisurely walked out of the inner room, her clear eyes shining with a faint light. How did you know it was a hunchback? How did you know? The moment Yarrow Sulwan saw Yarrow Moen, she clenched her fists and smashed them against the ground. If Yarrow Moen hadn't threatened her, how could she have admitted to Yi Junqing's accusations? How could she have taken all the blame? Wang Qinruo is very smart. That move of luring the snake out of its hole was indeed effective. Unfortunately, she didn't grasp the opportunity, which was why she'd used a shaoshunzi. Of course, the shaoshunzi was actually arranged by this consort. It was just to scare second older sister. Yarrow Moen walked over to Yarrow Sulwan with small steps. Her lips curved into a cold smile, making her look like the most terrifying Azura in hell. This consort did it so secretly, there's no way you could have detected it. Yarrow Sulwan looked towards Yarrow Moen in disbelief. As soon as the rumors had started spreading, she had contacted the person who had contacted her in secret to confirm the source of the rumors. Yarrow Sulwan had thought that she had done it flawlessly, but she hadn't expected that Yarrow Moen would still be able to find some clues. How difficult would it be to guess that hunchback? You're in the inner palace, so if you want to control the rumors, even if that person isn't someone from the palace, they're definitely someone who can enter and leave the imperial palace at any time. Furthermore, the palace maids and eunuchs have always been very loose-lipped. Adding on the fact that you've offended An Bingshan, you definitely can't use the palace maids or eunuchs just to be safe. As for the imperial guards and consorts, it's even more impossible. Aside from these people, there are only those few people who can enter and leave the imperial palace every day. It's impossible for the merchants and officials to check the accounts every month because merchants aren't reliable. Then there's only old Zhu San, who's in charge of the imperial palace's waste disposal. People call him Hunchback Zhu. Yarrow Moen replied coldly. This time, it was all thanks to Wang Qinruo, otherwise it would have been very difficult for her to find out who Hunchback Zhu was. Now that she had this information on her, Yarrow Sulwan was like a puppet in her hands that she could manipulate. The fact that she had admitted everything in front of Yi Junqing was the best example. Yarrow Moen. You devil. You. Yarrow Sulwan wanted to curse, but Yarrow Moen grabbed her chin and forcefully lifted it up, forcing Yarrow Sulwan to look at her. That's right. This consort is a devil that will take revenge for eldest sister. Yarrow Sulwan, listen up. No matter how much you curse in your heart, don't let this consort hear it. Otherwise, this consort has the ability to make you wish you were dead. Yarrow Moen's eyes were icy cold as she flung away the hand that was holding Yarrow Sulwan's chin. Why? Yarrow Sulwan glared at Yarrow Moen after being thrown to the ground. When Yarrow Moen heard this, she lowered her eyes and looked towards Yarrow Sulwan coldly. Why don't you let Yi Junqing know the truth? Why don't you tell him that the person who forced Yarrow Morshin to death was His Majesty? It was His Majesty who forced Yarrow Morshin to sign the confession, and it was His Majesty who threw that child to the ground. Yarrow Moen, what exactly are you thinking? Yarrow Sulwan smiled coldly as she looked towards Yarrow Moen. All you need to know is that from today onwards, if this consort tells you to go east, you can't go west. If this consort tells you to crawl, you can't get up. As for the rest, there's no need for second older sister to worry. Yarrow Moen glanced at Yarrow Sulwan disdainfully. Just as she was about to leave, she heard Yarrow Sulwan's crazed laughter. Ha ha ha. Yarrow Moen, do you think that this consort doesn't know what you're thinking? You're afraid that Yi Junqing will find Yi Hongyi for revenge after finding out. You're protecting Yi Junqing. You say that you only hate this consort, but you hate Yi Hongyi even more. Everything you've done is to pave the way for Yi Junqing. One day, you'll make Yi Junqing seize Yi Hongyi's throne. Ha ha. It's a pity that this consort found out too late. Otherwise, this consort wouldn't have lost so badly. Yarrow Sulwan pounded the ground fiercely as tears flowed out of her eyes. She knew that this time, she was completely finished. However, she couldn't accept it. If second older sister can listen obediently, perhaps this consort will spare second older sister's life and allow second older sister to personally see everything you just said become reality. Yarrow Moen's deep eyes swept past Yarrow Sulwan before she left indifferently. Inside the imperial study, Yi Hongyi had locked himself inside for 2 days and 2 nights without coming out. At this moment, Azure Dragon pushed open the door and entered. How is it? Is there any news of Wang Qinruo? Yi Hongyi abruptly raised his eyes. His sunken eyes were bloodshot and his heart was filled with unease. Chapter 220. Replying Your Majesty, this subordinate is useless. I couldn't find consort Shu's whereabouts even after searching the entire city. Azure Dragon knelt on one knee with an ashamed expression. She's a living person, so why can't you guys find her? What have we been raising you guys for? At the crucial moment, all of you are so useless. Search again. No matter what, if she's alive, I want to see her. If she's dead, I want to see her corpse, shouted Yi Hongyi angrily as he stood up. Azure Dragon didn't dare to tarry and immediately left the Imperial study. Once Azure Dragon left, Yi Hongyi fell back onto the dragon throne due to exhaustion. No, he couldn't just sit here and wait for death. If this matter was exposed, the person he hated the most would be Yi Junqing. Although Wang Qinruo was despicable, she was right about one thing: cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. He couldn't let Yi Junqing live in this world anymore. But how was he supposed to get rid of Yi Junqing? He needed to think about it properly. In the east wing of Guan Osprey Palace, Yi Junqing didn't know how long he had been unconscious. The moment he opened his eyes, there was only one thought in his mind: kill Yarrow Sulwan. Just as Yi Junqing was about to get up, he suddenly felt his entire body go limp. He didn't even have the strength to press his palms against the bed. Save it, you've been poisoned by bone softening powder, so you won't be able to get up for now. Yarrow Moen walked over to Yi Junqing calmly. Bone softening powder? It's you. Why? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen angrily as he tried to prop himself up. Yarrow Sulwan can't die. Yarrow Moen got straight to the point. Do you know what she did? She threw Morshin's child to death and forced Morshin to death. She can't die. She should be hacked to pieces, said Yi Junqing angrily. His eyes were filled with killing intent. She has eldest sister's confession in her hands. As long as she dies, that confession will be made public to the world. At that time, the empress that the people of Great Chu revered the most would instantly become a slut that everyone would condemn. Is this what Prince wants to see? Yarrow Moen frowned as she walked to Yi Junqing's side, her eyes filled with doubt. That was forced by Yarrow Sulwan, Yi Junqing argued. Who knows? Yarrow Moen asked harshly. This prince, and you as well. Yi Junqing's brows were tightly knitted together as great waves surged in his eyes. Your Highness is the person involved. Ben Gong is eldest sister's younger sister, and also a fool. Who would believe us? In the eyes of the world, an explanation is just a cover-up. There are some things that can only be covered up the more one tries to cover up. Eldest sister has already died very miserably. Could it be that you want eldest sister to be spurned by tens of thousands of people after her death? Said Yarrow Moen harshly, her every word piercing Yi Junqing's heart like a hammer. Then what should we do? Could it be that they were going to let Yarrow Sulwan get away scot-free like that? This prince can't do it, roared Yi Junqing angrily. Unpunished? But why does Ben Gong feel like the current Yarrow Sulwan is living a life worse than death? Yarrow Moen pursed her lips slightly, a faint smile in her eyes. What do you mean? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen in confusion. Prince, think about it. How could a revered imperial Gui Fei be reduced to such a miserable state? Yarrow Mo Wn said leisurely, the corners of her lips hooking up in a smile. It was done by you? Yi Junqing furrowed his brows as he asked in a low voice. Back then, when Moen found out that your majesty held a grudge against Huan Heng, she guessed that your majesty would definitely use Huan Kia to attack Huan Heng. As long as Huan Kia did something immoral in the inner palace, Huan Heng would definitely give up his military power and beg for mercy for his daughter. At the time, the one who had the ability to deal Huan Kia a fatal blow was Yarrow Sulwan. Because of this, Moen found a swindler called by Mai to trick the pregnant Yarrow Sulwan, saying that the child in her womb was eldest sister's reincarnation. Yarrow Sulwan had a guilty conscience and was blinded by greed, so she proposed to His Majesty to sacrifice the child in her womb to frame Huan Kia. In the end, although Yarrow Sulwan aborted her child, Huan Heng found saffron in Pure Flower's palace. Yarrow Sulwan went for wool and came home shorn. She lost the title of Imperial Gui Fei and was demoted 2 ranks to consort, said Yarrow Moen calmly. You were the one who put the saffron there. Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen in realization. Ben Gong's move could be considered as taking revenge for Ben Gong's little nephew. Later on, Yarrow Yu jumping into the lake was also Ben Gong's doing. The goal was to make Yarrow Sulwan break off relations with father. The court and inner palace have always been closely related. Without father's support, Yarrow Sulwan wouldn't have been able to accomplish anything. It was also because of this that she took the risk out of desperation and conspired with luminescent Prince Yi Zixiao to rebel. Although father was the only one who suffered from this rebellion, Yarrow Sulwan was still father's daughter. After this incident, Yarrow Sulwan could be considered to have completely lost the imperial favor. The smile on Yarrow Moen's lips deepened. These were only the two most unremarkable of her many plans. The reason she told Yi Junqing about them was because she wanted him to understand that she had always been working hard for the sake of eldest sister's revenge. You already knew that Morsheen was killed by Yarrow Sulwan? After hearing Yarrow Moen's words, the anger in Yi Junqing's heart gradually subsided. In this moment, he finally understood why Yarrow Moen had always opposed Yarrow Sulwan ever since she entered the palace. What else? Could it be that you really think that Moen cares about some imperial favor? Yarrow Moen said disdainfully. How did you know? Why didn't you tell this prince? Yi Junqing frowned in dissatisfaction. Moen heard about it from Do Xianglan. As for why I didn't tell Prince, it was because I was afraid that Prince would be as impulsive as today and end Yarrow Sulwan's life. If that really was the case, wouldn't Moen's hatred be satisfied? Yarrow Moen sighed inwardly, then got up to pour a cup of water for Yi Junqing. That's right. People who committed heinous crimes shouldn't die so easily. However, you won't just let her off like this, right? Yi Junqing felt his mouth go dry, so he drank all the water Yarrow Moen handed him in one gulp. Of course not. It's just that before Moen finds a better way to tease Yarrow Sulwan, can Prince not interfere? Yarrow Moen took the empty teacup from Yi Junqing and asked this with a lift of her brows. All right. In the end, you're Morsheen's younger sister, so it's only right that you take revenge. This prince will wait to see Yarrow Sulwan's retribution. Yi Junqing nodded fiercely, then sat up. Don't worry, Prince. Moen will definitely do everything I can to satisfy Prince. Yarrow Moen's eyes curved, finally making Yi Junqing give up on pursuing for now. However, after this time, Yi Hongyi would definitely make a move, so they could only be careful. Ever since Wang Qinruo left, Yi Hongyi had become depressed and the number of times he went to Guan Osprey Palace had decreased. Yarrow Moen also found peace. It was rare that she didn't have to put on an act, so she was happy to be at ease. However, after a few days of peace, great waves were stirred up again. Inside Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Moen was currently sitting on the swing, swaying back and forth. The autumn wind blew her long, ink-like hair. Occasionally, a few fallen leaves would fall on her shoulders, adding a hint of haziness to her beautiful face. Your Highness, Huanheng wishes to see Your Highness. He says it's an extremely important matter. As usual, Yin Shui floated down next to Yarrow Moen, even lighter than the fallen leaves. It's an extremely important matter. Go and arrange it. Midnight, Pleasant Arrival Tavern, Sky Character Room 1, instructed Yarrow Moen in a low voice. A ripple appeared in her heart. That night, the crescent moon hung in the sky like a bow. The stars in the surroundings shone with a gloomy light. All of Chang'an Street was indescribably desolate. As the wind blew past, it gave off a desolate feeling. When Huanheng appeared in front of Yarrow Moen with a worried expression, Yarrow Moen had already been sitting at the table for a long time. She was still dressed in plain clothes with a black veil over her head. Old General Huan is so anxious to see Jingxin. Is there something important? Asked Yarrow Moen when she saw the worry in Huanheng's eyes. Chapter 221. If this old man remembers correctly, Miss once said that as long as this old man followed Miss wholeheartedly, you would ensure the safety of this old man and my family. Huanheng looked towards Yarrow Moen solemnly. Jingxin did say that. What kind of trouble has old General Huan encountered? Yarrow Moen pondered inwardly. Right now, the court was peaceful and there were no external battles, so Huanheng shouldn't be in any danger. It's not this old man, it's this old man's daughter. Recently, Seer secretly sent this old man a message saying that His Majesty wants to send Seer to Lulan with the esteemed prince. Miss isn't an ordinary person, you should be able to guess His Majesty's intentions, said Huan Heng anxiously. His Majesty wants Consort Chen to leave the capital with the esteemed prince. Yarrow Moen furrowed her brows in shock. It seemed that she had guessed correctly. Yi Hongyi was preparing to make a move. If it wasn't a matter of life and death, this old man wouldn't dare to disturb Miss so easily. Huan Heng looked towards Yarrow Moen pleadingly. Old General Huan means that His Majesty wants to use Consort Chen's life to get rid of the esteemed prince. If Consort Chen doesn't return from Lulan, then it would mean that Yi Junqing didn't protect her well enough. Yarrow Moen hadn't expected that Yi Hongyi had hidden this information so well. She hadn't heard anything about it before. Other than this possibility, this old man really can't think of a better reason. These are troubled times. Of the 4 noble consorts, 3 are either dead or gone. Now, it's this old man's daughter's turn. Huan Heng's expression was worried as he sighed sorrowfully. That's easy. As long as Consort Chen pretends to be sick, she'll be able to avoid this calamity. Yarrow Moen's eyes turned as she thought of a plan. Easier said than done. The imperial physicians of the imperial hospital aren't freeloaders. If His Majesty finds out, Seer will inevitably be charged with deceiving the monarch. At that time, won't she still have to die? Huan Heng disagreed. Aren't the imperial doctors in the imperial hospital freeloading? Old General, don't worry. Leave this matter to Jing Xin. Jing Xin guarantees that your precious daughter will stay in the imperial palace safely. The corners of Yarrow Moen's lips lifted slightly. Since she clearly understood Yi Hongyi's intentions, she naturally had a way to deal with it. Is Mrs. Words true? Huan Heng looked towards Yarrow Moen suspiciously, still worried. If you say so, you'll definitely be able to do it. His firm voice gradually calmed Huan Heng's anxious heart. When they returned to Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Moen knew that this matter couldn't be delayed, so she had Yin Shui secretly make a trip to Moon Crossing Pavilion. The next morning at breakfast, Yarrow Moen looked at Yi Junqing, who was sitting next to her. I heard that Prince is going on a diplomatic mission to Lulan. Yarrow Moen picked up some food absent-mindedly as she looked away from Yi Junqing. How did you know? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen in shock. Then it's true. It must have been hard for Moen to treat Prince as a friend and tell you everything she knows. But does Prince place Moen in your heart? Yarrow Moen sighed lightly as the light in her eyes dimmed. Then, she put down her chopsticks with an expression of extreme disappointment. Ahem. You don't seem to be able to say everything you know. Yi Junqing felt guilty and retorted in a low voice. When Yarrow Moen heard this, she got up to leave, but Yi Junqing persuaded her to stay back. This prince wanted to tell you, but His Majesty said that this mission is very secretive and the fewer people who know, the better. Ever since he found out that Yarrow Moen had entered the palace to get revenge for Morshine, Yi Junqing's attitude towards Yarrow Moen gradually changed from being forced to compromise to actively expressing goodwill. Why? Yarrow Moen narrowed her eyes as she looked towards Yi Junqing suspiciously. This. Yi Junqing hesitated. If you don't want to say it, then forget it. Yarrow Moen was instantly annoyed and wanted to leave again. Have you ever heard of Vic Mountain? Yi Junqing deliberately lowered his voice as he asked this question suspiciously. Vic Mountain. That's within the borders of Lushan country. Why are you suddenly bringing it up? Yarrow Moen slowly sat back down and frowned as she looked towards Yi Junqing in confusion. According to His Majesty's secret envoy's report, Vic Mountain contains a large amount of iron ore, so much so that it's impossible to estimate. Moreover, this mountain stretches for several hundred li and borders the borders of Shu, Yu, and Qi. The news says that Chu Morbei and Feng Yihan have already left for Lulan. They must have received this news as well, so they want to discuss this matter with King Lulan. His Majesty's intention is for this prince to go to Lulan and negotiate for the rights to mine the iron ore at the border between Vic Mountain and Great Chu, said Yi Junqing solemnly with a serious expression. Iron ore. Yarrow Moen's clear eyes lit up and her cherry lips subconsciously curved in a greedy smile. Vic Mountain was several million times larger than Linchi. If there really was iron ore there, then wouldn't they be rich? If you can't get fat in one bite, don't even think about it. King Lulan is famous for his shrewdness. He's not as generous as Feng Yihan. Yi Junqing reminded Yarrow Moen in jealousy. Moen just likes shrewd people. Yarrow Moen's lips curved into a smile. It's useless even if you like him. His Majesty doesn't plan on letting you go with this prince this time. If you just rely on Lightning Rush, you probably won't even be able to see King Lulan, said Yi Junqing indifferently, but he was a bit disappointed. His Majesty is letting Huan Qia go with Prince. Yarrow Moen lifted her brows as she looked towards Yi Junqing with interest. Is there anything in this world that you don't know? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen in astonishment. Don't worry, Huan Qia has contracted an infectious disease. It'll probably be difficult for her to even leave Moon Crossing Pavilion now. Yarrow Moen looked towards Yi Junqing confidently. That can't be. This prince just ran into Consort Chen in the Imperial Garden yesterday. Although she seemed a bit tired, she didn't show any symptoms of an illness. Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen. That's because Moen only received the news last night. Yarrow Moen didn't hide the reason at all. Yi Junqing was speechless. The corners of his lips twitched and black lines appeared on his forehead. There was no doubt that this was Yarrow Moen's doing. However, when Yi Junqing thought about how Yarrow Moen would be accompanying him on this trip, a faint feeling of joy flashed through his heart. Even he himself didn't notice it. Chapter 222. Your Majesty, don't forget that King Lolan's favorite daughter, Sunshine Princess, is in a similar situation as noble consort Yao. At that time, Your Majesty could say that it was noble consort Yao's kindness that moved King Lulan, which was why he agreed to this deal with Great Chu, reminded An Bingshan carefully. That's right, how could we have forgotten that King Lulan has an idiot daughter? All right, we'll do as you say. As for Yi Junqing, since this method doesn't work, we'll think of another way. Yi Hongyi narrowed his eyes as he thought about it. When Yi Hongyi suggested having Yarrow Moen and Yi Junqing accompany him to Lulan, Yarrow Moen clutched her heart with both hands. She had just been fretting over how to convince Yi Hongyi, but to her surprise, it was Yi Hongyi who spoke first. What? Wan isn't willing? Only the heavens knew how hard it was for Yarrow Moen to frown even though she was happy. You're telling Wan to leave again? But Wan can't bear to part with Your Majesty. Yarrow Moen puckered her lips and threw herself into Yi Hongyi's arms, her eyes misty. How could we bear to part with Wan? Don't worry, this is the last time. Once Wan returns safely after accomplishing a great deed, we'll make you Empress. All right? Yi Hongyi carefully lifted Yarrow Moen's devastatingly beautiful face, his eyes filled with pity. This was the first time in his life that he had truly treated a woman well. There were no schemes, no tricks. He just wanted this woman to accompany him until he grew old. His heart suddenly felt like it had been swept by a cold wind, leaving behind countless bloody scars. Empress. Back then, Yi Hongyi had used the most merciless method to push her from the position of Empress into an infernal hell. Now, he was using all his strength to push her back to that position. Yarrow Moen suddenly felt like the heavens were playing a huge joke on her. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wan, what's wrong? Asked Yi Hongyi worriedly when he saw the tears in Yarrow Moen's eyes. Your Majesty wants to make Wan Empress? But Wan is only an idiot. Wan isn't worthy. Yarrow Moen clearly felt like a knife was twisting in her heart, but she still had to act like she was crying tears of joy. It was the same hardship, but the mood was different. If Shen says you're worthy, then you're worthy, said Yi Hongyi resolutely as he tightly embraced Yarrow Moen. Can Wana really be like older sister, wearing such beautiful clothes and living in such a spacious Changle palace? Yarrow Moen wiped away her tears, her voice heavy with sobs. Our foolish Wana, when the time comes, we will build you a palace that's even more luxurious than Changle Palace. Yi Hongyi vowed solemnly. Wan loves Your Majesty the most. Yarrow Moen smiled through her tears as she snuggled tightly into Yi Hongyi's embrace. Her heart, however, was cold to the point of freezing. That night, Yi Hongyi gently begged as if he wanted to use his body to express all of his love and sincerity, but all Yarrow felt was a bone-chilling coldness. As the day of departure approached, Yarrow Moen purposely made a trip to Pure Flower's palace. "What are you doing here?" Yarrow Sulwan's clothes were disheveled and her hair was in a messy bun. She leaned back on the chaise lounge as her cold eyes glanced at Yarrow Moen. "You've abandoned yourself so quickly? This isn't the second older sister Moen knows." When Yarrow Moen saw Yarrow Sulwan's dispirited and dejected appearance, a trace of happiness rose in Yarrow Moen's heart. "You killed Hunchback Jew?" Yarrow Sulwan harumphed coldly as she looked towards Yarrow Moen. Ever since Yarrow Moen left that day, she had tried to contact old Jusan but found out that the person in charge of cleaning up the Imperial Palace's waste had already been changed. How could that be? His second older sister's witness. How could Moen bear to kill him? "I'm just finding a place for him to stay," replied Yarrow Moen absent-mindedly. She slowly walked to the table and sat across from Yarrow Sulwan. "Yarrow Moen, you can't beat His Majesty. He's not as useless as you think." Yarrow Sulwan looked coldly at Yarrow Moen. After calming down these past few days, she finally understood that from the beginning, Yarrow Moen's goal had been revenge. It was her carelessness that caused her to suffer such a crushing defeat. Of course, His Majesty is so shrewd that he actually allowed Moen to accompany the esteemed prince on a diplomatic mission to Lulan. Furthermore, he promised that after this trip, he would make Moen empress. "Second older sister, the thing that you've spent your entire life chasing is easily obtained by Moen. Say, don't you think that the heavens are very unfair?" Yarrow Moen's cherry lips lightly pursed, her eyes smiling. "Yi Hongyi, that idiot. He actually wants to make you empress." Yarrow Sulwan stood up agitatedly and glared at Yarrow Moen. "That's right, that idiot thinks that Moen likes the throne of empress so much. He even promised to build a palace that's even more luxurious than Changal Palace for Moen. Unfortunately, he doesn't know that what Moen truly wants isn't some empress position, but his throne." Yarrow Moen's voice gradually grew colder and her eyes shone with cold light. "How could he make you empress? How could he? Back then, he was the one who promised Ben Gong that as long as Yarrow Morshin died, the throne of empress would be Ben Gong's. Why? Why would he treat Ben Gong like this?" Yarrow Sulwan frantically tore at the silk on the chaise lounge as her eyes turned crimson. Yarrow Moen watched coldly as Yarrow Sulwan grumbled and cursed, a trace of coldness flashing through her heart. "Yarrow Sulwan, this is your retribution. You can't blame anyone." "Retribution? Every man for himself, heaven and earth will destroy him. What's wrong with Ben Gong planning for myself?" It was Yarrow Morshin who was stupid. It was her who showed off in front of His Majesty, causing His Majesty to be unable to tolerate her and that child. But what did Ben Gong do wrong? Why does His Majesty treat Ben Gong like this? Why? Yarrow Sulwan's eyes were about to split open as she charged in front of Yarrow Moen. "Eldest sister isn't stupid, she's just misplaced her life. The one who's truly stupid is you, second older sister. You should have realized that from the moment Yi Hongyi had you participate in plotting against eldest sister, he already had killing intent. Let me ask you, who likes the feeling of having their weakness caught by others, let alone a dignified monarch of a country?" said Yarrow Moen coldly as she looked towards Yarrow Sulwan. Ben Gong didn't have a choice. Yarrow Sulwan howled in grief. "You can choose. If you had told eldest sister what you know, everything would have been different," said Yarrow Moen coldly as she gripped Yarrow Sulwan's wrist. "Pa, even if Ben Gong dies, I won't tell that lowly concubine." Chapter 223. Old General, don't worry. In 10 days, Consort Chen's symptoms will disappear. Yarrow Moen knew that Huan Heng was worried about Huan Qia's health. "That's good. Very good." Huan Heng nodded firmly and let out a long sigh. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but sigh when she saw the relief in Huan Heng's eyes. As a father, Huan Heng's love for his daughter was something Yarrow Zhenting would never be able to learn. After everything was settled, Yarrow Moen left the imperial city with Yi Junqing without any worries. In order to keep it a secret, Yi Hongyi only assigned his 4 bodyguards to Yi Junqing. They left the city at 5 in the morning and didn't make a sound. However, because Yarrow Moen was with them, their speed naturally slowed down. After the autumn rain last night, the air was especially refreshing. The smell of the earth in the air was especially refreshing, so people couldn't help but take a few more breaths. Noble consort Yarrow, we still need to hurry on. Please return to the carriage. In the forest, Yarrow Moen's arms were spread out as she faced the sky and took deep breaths. She seemed to be enjoying herself. Azure Dragon Guard, please understand. My Lady Imperial Concubine has been sitting in the carriage for several hours and the journey has been very bumpy. It's not easy for her to come out to loosen her muscles and bones. Please wait a little longer. At the side, Tingyu walked over to the Azure Dragon Guard and begged obediently. But Azure Dragon looked towards Yarrow Moen awkwardly before sighing and returning to Yi Juanqing's side. Prince, how about you go and persuade Her Highness? She's already been standing there for 2 hours, said Azure Dragon helplessly. Do you think she'll listen to this, Prince? Yi Juanqing was also a bit speechless. Although he knew that Yarrow Moen wouldn't delay their journey for no reason, she should at least give him a heads up first. If Her Highness continues to be so willful, I really don't know when we'll reach Lulan. Azure Dragon turned to look at Lady Chu, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. The three of them seemed even more irritated than he was. After about another hour, Yi Juanqing finally couldn't hold himself back anymore and walked over to Yarrow Moen. You've already been like this for 3 hours. Aren't you tired? You should at least walk a bit. When his gaze landed on Yarrow Moen's face, he was shocked to see that beads of sweat had already appeared on that alluring face. Do you think I want to? My legs are numb. Yarrow Moen's voice contained a hint of anger. When Yi Juanqing heard this, his lips couldn't help but twitch. Right at this time, Azure Dragon and the others suddenly surrounded Yarrow Moen and looked around vigilantly. All right, look at how anxious you guys are. This consort will just leave. Yarrow Moen pinched her throat as she spoke. Taking advantage of the fact that the 4 of them had their backs to her, she began to pound her legs furiously. Your Highness, it looks like we can't leave. Who is it? Come out. Azure Dragon's eyes were cold as he roared. Almost at the same time, more than 10 masked men in black suddenly appeared in the forest and surrounded Yarrow Moen and the others. Who are they? Asked Yarrow Moen in a trembling voice as she tugged on Yi Juanqing's sleeve. Prince, leave this place to us. Please take Her Highness and leave first. We'll chase after them later. Qing Long and the other 3 immediately took out their weapons and stood in front of Yarrow Moen. Be careful. Yi Juanqing nodded fiercely before pulling Yarrow Moen onto the carriage. Ting Yu naturally jogged after them. Hiya. While Yi Juanqing was driving the carriage away, Azure Dragon and the others were already fighting with the masked men. Even after they left the forest, Yi Juanqing still didn't see any black-clothed men chasing after them. Naturally, Azure Dragon and the others were nowhere to be seen either. Instead, an uninvited guest had arrived. Yang Nansheng, what are you doing here? Yi Juanqing looked towards Yang Nansheng in confusion, then his eyes glistened as realization dawned on him. You were the one who sent those people? Yi Juanqing finally understood why Yarrow Moen was pretending to be enjoying herself even though her legs were numb. It turned out that she was waiting for someone. That's right, didn't WNR tell you? Yang Nansheng could already see the answer from Yi Juanqing's expression. At this time, Yang Nansheng was already sitting in the carriage. Her beautiful red dress fluttered in the wind like a fiery red maple leaf, adding a beautiful stroke to the bleak scenery. Yang Nansheng, you still have the face to appear in front of me. We agreed on the time, open your eyes wide and see what time it is. The moment Yang Nansheng sat down, he felt a gust of wind blow past him. He saw Yarrow Moen rush out with a sinister expression and grab Yang Nansheng by the collar. Ahem. It's broad daylight, WNR is in such a hurry to grab this seat's clothes, isn't it? A bit too early? Of course, if WNR doesn't mind, this seat can make do with this carriage. Yang Nansheng smiled. His flawless face was like a blooming peony in front of Yarrow Moen, instantly extinguishing most of the anger in Yarrow Moen's heart. If it wasn't for this face, I'd definitely beat you until even your parents wouldn't be able to recognize you. Yarrow Moen snorted coldly, then let go of Yang Nansheng's collar. Aya, it's a bit late, but it didn't delay the beauty's business. Yang Nansheng tried to curry favor when he saw Yarrow Moen sitting there in a huff. Now, who can tell this king what exactly happened? When Yi Junqing saw that Yang Nansheng and Yarrow Moen looked like they were flirting, he finally couldn't take it anymore and abruptly pulled on the reins. This seat will leave first, you guys take your time. When Yang Nansheng saw Yi Junqing's expression, he immediately jumped up. As Yarrow Moen watched the red dress flutter through the air, she couldn't help but sigh. Even a celestial immortal descending to the mortal world wouldn't amount to much, right? Just as Yarrow Moen was lost in her thoughts, dark clouds suddenly appeared in front of her. Yi Junqing had appeared in front of her like a huge mountain. Why are you intercepting Azure Dragon and the others? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen in confusion. With them around, this journey will be much more boring. Yarrow Moen lifted her brows in response, but she was thinking about something else. Back in Guan Osprey Palace, Yin Shui was familiar with the terrain, so it was naturally easy for her to hide. Now that they were on a long journey and Azure Dragon and the others were following them, not only would it be difficult for Yin Shui to hide, it would also be inconvenient for her to call Yin Shui out. That was why she had Yang Nansheng help her lure Azure Dragon and the others away. They'll catch up sooner or later. Chapter 224. Yen, it's not one bit inferior to the imperial chef. Yarrow Moen confirmed. Morshine has also praised this prince like that, but unfortunately, Yi Junqing's lips were slightly pressed together. The light from the flames seemed to light up his clear eyes, creating a stark contrast with the desolate expression on his face. Yarrow Moen was slightly shaken. How could she have forgotten that this wasn't the first time she had eaten snake meat personally roasted by Yi Junqing? When she had gone to Shu to negotiate, she had already tasted it. Damn it. Whenever Yarrow Moen thought of Shu, she couldn't help but think of Chu Morbei's devilishly handsome face. His slight smile made it seem like the entire world was within his calculations. Who deserves to die? Yi Junqing turned to look at Yarrow Moen. Chu Morbei. I have a feeling that the reason Chu Morbei has personally come this time isn't just for those iron mines in Vic Mountain, that sly and crafty fellow. If it's possible, I don't want to see him ever again. Yarrow Moen took a huge bite of the snake meat as if it had been cut from Chu Morbei's body. See him again? You've seen Chu Morbei before? Yi Junqing's eyes narrowed slightly as he grew suspicious. Of course I haven't. I've only heard eldest sister mention this person. Eldest sister said that this person is her nemesis for life. He's sinister, cunning, and full of tricks. A magnanimous person like me naturally wouldn't want to have dealings with someone like that. Yarrow Moen realized that she had misspoken and immediately tried to explain. Is that so? But this prince feels that this person's true nature is much better than those hypocrites, said Yi Junqing disappointedly. He really is a vile person. Yarrow Moen corrected him inwardly. Right at this time, there was a gust of wind and Yin Shui appeared next to Yarrow Moen. Reporting to Master, Ben Lei has already set off from Mongyuan with wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. They'll reach Lulan in half a month at the soonest, reported Yin Shui solemnly. Half a month? That's faster than us. Have them enter Yeju first when they arrive and find a place to stay. This consort will meet up with them later. Yarrow Moen's eyes shone brightly as she instructed indifferently. Yes. Yin Shui accepted the order and left so quickly that it was as if she had never appeared. Why did you send Ben Lei to Lulan? It couldn't be that you're planning on taking the iron mine, right? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen in disbelief. The listener has a share. Since this consort knows of this news, there's no reason for this consort to do nothing. Furthermore, there's so much soup, so Moen won't mind taking a sip. Yarrow Moen's cherry lips curved into a faint smile. Stop dreaming. King Lulan has always schemed against others. He's never been able to get away empty-handed, said Yi Junqing disapprovingly. Moen isn't just anyone. Yarrow Moen moved closer to Yi Junqing and looked towards him mysteriously. Then who are you? Yi Junqing couldn't help but choke when he saw those crafty eyes twinkling like stars. Every time Yarrow Moen revealed this kind of gaze, it meant that someone was going to be unlucky. Who would it be this time? Could it be King Lulan? I'm not telling you. Yarrow Moen suddenly withdrew her gaze and opened her mouth to take a bite of the snake meat. I'm Morshin Ah. Yarrow Moen's heart ached slightly. If you don't want to tell me, then forget it. This prince will use these eyes to see just how capable you are, said Yi Junqing angrily. Then he handed the roasted snake meat to Yarrow Moen. It took a total of 20 days to travel from the imperial city of Great Chu to the country of Lulan. To Yarrow Moen, these 20 days were the happiest period of time since her rebirth. She treasured and was grateful for every second she spent with Yi Junqing. This subordinate Qing Long kowtows in salute to prince and noble consort. Before entering the city, Qing Long and the others finally caught up to Yarrow Moen and Yi Junqing. When Yi Junqing saw the dark circles around their eyes, sallow complexions, and protruding cheekbones, Yi Junqing felt a little guilty. Where did you guys run off to? This consort and prince have waited for you so many times. His Majesty definitely doesn't know that your legs aren't good, otherwise he definitely wouldn't have let you guys follow. Yarrow Moen lifted her brows and pouted as she looked at the 4 people in front of her. At the side, Yi Junqing's lips curved slightly as he subconsciously glanced at Yarrow Moen. He admired her inwardly. How could she say something that went against her heart without even blinking? When the 4 people heard this, they immediately wiped at their sweat. At this time, Yarrow Moen and the others were walking on the busiest street of Lowland's capital city, Yi City. There was a sea of people and an endless stream of horses and carriages. On both sides of the street, there were tea houses, taverns, pawnshops, and workshops. There were all kinds of things being sold. There was silk, tea, grapes, jewelry, everything that one could think of. It was a scene of prosperity. The way the people of Lulan dressed was especially different from the way the people of the Central Plains dressed, which was simple and plain, gentle and generous. The women's clothes were mostly red and pink, and everything else was bright and gorgeous. Young girls who were about to be married wore white veils to add a sense of mystery. But what shocked Yarrow Moen the most wasn't the prosperity of Yi City, but the familiar figure in front of her. Yi Han. Yarrow Moen ran over in pleasant surprise, but she only saw a flash of cold light. Fortunately, Yi Junqing had stepped forward in time to protect Yarrow Moen. Otherwise, Ting Feng's sword would have taken Yarrow Moen's life. Ting Feng, stop. When Feng Yihan heard this, he turned around. Against the light, his imposing figure seemed to glow like a god. His bright phoenix eyes shone with a dazzling light the moment he saw Yarrow Moen. Noble consort Yarrow. Esteemed prince. I didn't think you'd come so quickly. Feng Yihan walked over to Yi Junqing, his eyes shining like stars. That's right. Wana also didn't think I'd see you here. Yarrow Moen pushed Yi Junqing aside and walked over happily. Yihan didn't know that noble consort Yarrow would come, otherwise I would definitely have carried Sai Qing over to relieve your highness of the pain of lovesickness. Feng Yihan's eyes glowed as he locked onto the woman in front of him. The pain of lovesickness finally turned to dust. Reporting to noble consort, this subordinate should escort you back to the guest house first. When Qing Long saw that Yarrow Moen and Feng Yihan were intimate, he immediately walked forward and spoke respectfully. No wonder I didn't see you guys. So you guys just entered the city. King Lulan has already prepared guest houses for Qi, Shu, and you. Ting Feng, bring these people back to the guest house first. We want to catch up with the esteemed prince and noble consort Yao. Yes. This way please. Ting Feng accepted the order and walked over to Qing Long and the others. But Qing Long looked towards Yi Junqing awkwardly. You guys return to the guest house first. It's fine with this prince here. Yi Junqing nodded slightly. Qing Long had no choice but to leave with his subordinates and follow Ting Feng. Yarrow Moen only sighed in relief when Qing Long and the others disappeared into the crowd. Then she looked towards Feng Yihan. I hadn't expected that old thing King Lulan would actually arrange for the nobles of the 3 countries to stay in the same guest house. This isn't a good sign. A gentle smile appeared in Yarrow Moen's eyes as her lips curved in a mysterious smile. We'll deal with it as it comes. No matter how hard King Lulan is to deal with, it's just that his conditions are a bit harsh. Let's not think about this for now. Ihan will take you to eat. Feng Ihan's bright eyes flickered with a gentle light as he looked towards Yarrow Moen. Ahem. There's still a living person here. It's broad daylight, you guys should pay attention to your status. Yi Juanqing's expression gradually turned serious as he watched Feng Ihan continue to hold Yarrow Moen's hand. Pay attention to my status. Yarrow Moen abruptly turned around and pulled Yi Juanqing over with her other hand. Her cherry lips were as dazzling as a peach blossom. You! Hurry and let go. Yi Juanqing was shocked and really wanted to shake off Yarrow Moen's hand. Perhaps it was because the commotion would be too big, but it immediately attracted everyone's attention. Chapter 225. This is Lulan, there's no need for Prince to stand on ceremony. Let's go. Ihan came a few days earlier, so I know a good place. Feng Ihan looked towards Yi Juanqing with a faint smile before letting go of Yarrow Moen's hand and leaving first. Let's go, this isn't Guan Osprey Palace. Yarrow Moen smiled meaningfully before pulling Yi Juanqing along. Just as the three of them passed by Four Seas Casino, they suddenly heard a commotion inside. Yarrow Moen was startled and immediately pulled on Feng Ihan. It seems that there are quite a few familiar faces here. Yarrow Moen's lips curved slightly as she walked into the casino first. Feng Ihan and Yi Juanqing looked at each other in dismay, then followed in. At this time, Four Seas Casino had already descended into chaos. Everyone was gathered in the center to watch the commotion. Yarrow Moen followed everyone's gaze and a knowing smile appeared on her face. You bunch of swindlers. Bullying this prince for not being from Lulan, Juanxiu, smash this lousy place for this prince. Chu Morshin stood arrogantly in front of the overturned gambling table. His eyes were as sharp as bells and his voice was arrogant and domineering. Young master, your words are a bit too far-fetched. In the entire Four Seas Casino, there are no more than 10 or 20 true Lulan citizens. Most of the people here are foreign merchants and nobles from various countries, so how could I be biased? Besides, this lowly one is running a proper business. I don't cheat anyone or anyone. Look at these dice, they're as good as real. The dealer on the other side scowled miserably as he presented the dice to Chu Morshin with both hands. Who wants to see it? If this prince says this place deserves to be smashed, then it deserves to be smashed. Do it, shouted Chu Morshin loudly as he flung the dice away. Just as Huangfu Juanxiu was in a dilemma, a young girl wearing a white veil suddenly walked in. Uncle Ta La, what happened? The clear and melodious voice was like that of an oriole. The woman skipped away from the dice on the ground and walked in front of the dealer. She touched the dealer's bitter face with her fair hands, trying to smooth Tara's tightly furrowed brows. Sunshine Princess. Sunshine Princess, you have to speak up for Ta La. This young master is saying that Ta La is a scammer and wants to smash Ta La's place. The dealer clasped his hands together as he complained bitterly. Uncle Ta La, don't worry. Jura will judge for you. The young girl patted Tara's shoulder in a comforting manner before walking over to Chu Morshin. Are you the one who said that Uncle Tara runs a shady shop? The girl's clear eyes were like the full moon in the sky, pure and elegant, clear and translucent. Yes, this king said it. What's wrong with that? Chu Morshin lifted his brows as he looked at the girl in front of him. Beneath his crescent-shaped eyebrows, his eyes blinked as if they could speak. Of course it's wrong. You need to apologize to him, said the girl with a pout as she looked at Chu Morshin. Are you crazy? What kind of logic is that? Of. Smash. Of Ling Lan of Yun to of for of you're a bad person, so you should be punished by God. The girl threw away the ball of water and clapped her hands in laughter. Her voice was like the sounds of nature, and only her eyes were exposed, but her beauty was enough to topple a city. Chu Morshin glared at the girl's unbridled mockery and clenched his fists tightly. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't hit women, he would have already punched her. At this moment, The hair on Chu Morshin's forehead was dripping with water and he looked to be in an extremely sorry state. Preposterous. Smash, smash, smash. Hurry up and destroy this place for this king. Chu Morshin flew into a rage, his voice booming like a bell. Little prince really doesn't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. That girl was just joking with you, why are you so serious? Yarrow Moen walked through the crowd towards Chu Morshin. Seeing that it was Yarrow Moen, Chu Morshin suddenly turned and hid behind Huangfu Juanxiu. Don't come over. Hurry and leave. Hurry and take this prince away. Chu Morshin pulled Huangfu Juanxiu with extreme fear and disappeared from Four Seas Casino in the blink of an eye. In the center, Yarrow Moen froze on the spot. Her lips twitched and 3 black lines appeared on her forehead. Did she just see a ghost? This brat. Big sister is so amazing. The bad guys were scared off as soon as they saw Big Sister. On the other hand, the girl next to her happily grabbed Yarrow Moen's arm and jumped up and down in joy. How could Big Sister be as amazing as you? What was that just now? Yarrow Moen restrained the helplessness in her eyes and turned to hold the girl's hand as she asked softly. That's called a water ball. It's very soft and there's a small hole on it. As long as you press it lightly, water will shoot out. Imperial Father made a lot of them for Jira. Does Big Sister like them? Asked the girl childishly. I like them. Yarrow Moen nodded. Dage, bring another one over. When Yarrow Moen nodded, the girl had already taken a water ball from a nearby maid and handed it to Yarrow Moen. Jira will give Big Sister one. It's very good for self-defense. Every time Jira uses this, those bad guys will run away, said the girl firmly. Later, Yarrow Moen found out that this so-called water ball was specially made by King Lulan for his own daughter. As long as the entire country of Lulan saw this water ball, no matter how big of a turtle they ate, they would swallow their anger and retreat. You're called Jira? Yarrow Moen remembered that the banker had referred to the girl in front of her as the Sunshine Princess. If she guessed correctly, this girl was probably King Lolan's most beloved daughter. Yes, I'm called Kubu Jira. My imperial father is called Kubu Dan, but everyone calls him King Lulan, replied Kubu Jira seriously. Princess, we should go. If we return late, His Majesty will be worried again. Yarrow Moen still wanted to ask more questions, but Dage walked over and reminded her in a quiet voice. Big Sister, then Jira will leave first. Goodbye, Big Sister. Kubu Jira waved Yarrow Moen goodbye and skipped away. This is the legendary Sunshine Princess. But the rumors say that the Sunshine Princess is an idiot, but now it seems that she's just a little naive. She can't be called an idiot, right? Said Feng Yihan leisurely as he walked over to Yarrow Moen. For someone born in the Imperial Palace to be naive, wouldn't that make them idiots? Since the Sunshine Princess is like this, it can only be said that King Lulan has protected her too well. However, this kind of protection might not necessarily be a good thing for the Sunshine Princess. Yarrow Moen sighed inwardly as a trace of sadness flashed through her eyes. If this prince didn't see incorrectly, that domineering prince just now was Chu Morshin, right? Why did he run away as soon as he saw you? Yi Junqing also walked over and teased her. That's right, does this consort look like I can drive away ghosts? Why would he run away? At the mention of this, Yarrow Moen's expression turned sullen and she didn't even have the mood to eat anymore. Even so, Yarrow Moen and Yi Junqing were still dragged by Feng Yihan to 4 or 5 different places. They only returned to the guest house after eating until the sky was dark. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but sigh as she looked at the dazzling guest house in front of her. King Lulan really had too much money to spend. It was just a guest house, but the floor was paved with gold bricks and the railings were made of white jade. The 2 bright lion eyes on the 2 sides of the guest house were actually extremely rare red luminous pearls. It was truly extravagant. Chapter 226. Older Sister Moen, this prince has been waiting for you for a long time. Why did you only come back now? Just as Yarrow Moen was sighing, Chu Morshin ran out in a sky blue robe to greet Yarrow Moen happily. Yarrow Moen was speechless. All of the emotions on her face disappeared as she walked past Chu Morshin without looking sideways and walked straight into the guest house. Older sister Moen, wait for this prince. Seeing that Yarrow Moen was ignoring him, Chu Morshin immediately chased after her. Who are you? Does this consort recognize you? Yarrow Moen looked towards Chu Morshin blankly. This prince is Chu Morshin, Frosty Prince of Shu. Me. Chu Morshin pointed at his own face as he spoke anxiously. Sorry, I don't remember, said Yarrow Moen coldly. Just as she was about to walk away, Chu Morshin pulled her back. How could I forget? Look at these clothes, you were the one who made them for this prince. Also, when we were at the gambling house, you even talked to this prince. Chu Morshin got more and more anxious as he spoke and accidentally mentioned the gambling house. You also remember this consort talking to you at the gambling house? Then why did you run? Why? Tell me. Yarrow Moen flew into a rage like a dog whose tail had been stepped on. Why are you so fierce? This prince just didn't recognize you. Chu Morshin had never seen Yarrow Moen with such a furious expression before and immediately became listless. Then why do you have eyes? You didn't recognize me? Only a ghost would believe that, said Yarrow Moen hatefully. I just didn't recognize you, muttered Chu Morshin as he hung his head, his voice filled with grievance. Then I'm sorry, this consort didn't recognize you either. Go away. Yarrow Moen's anger hadn't subsided yet and she immediately pushed Chu Morshin away to leave. If you want to go away, then go away. Why are you being so fierce? Chu Morshin glared at Yarrow Moen angrily before returning to his room. Behind him, Yi Junqing and Feng Yihan looked at each other. They both felt that going forward right now wasn't a good idea, so they turned and allowed the servants to lead them back to their rooms. The moment Yarrow Moen stepped into the room, Huangfu Juanxiu followed her in. Shu subject Huangfu Juanxiu kowtows in salute to noble consort Yao. When Yarrow Moen saw that it was Huangfu Juanxiu, she turned to look at Tingyu in annoyance. Tingyu, this consort doesn't know him. Send the guest away. Tingyu knew that her master was acting in a fit of pique, so she deliberately slowed down to give Huangfu Juanxiu a chance to speak. Juanxiu knows that your highness is angry, but your highness has misunderstood little prince. The reason little prince ran out of the gambling den was because he didn't want your highness to see him in such a sorry state. After coming back from the gambling den, not only did little prince take a bath, he even forcefully put on his wet clothes. Then he stood under the sun for a whole 4 hours before his clothes dried, said Huangfu Juanxiu truthfully. Lord Huangfu, please. After Huangfu Juanxiu finished getting to the point, Tingyu pointed at the door, indicating for him to leave. Wait, why is he wearing wet clothes under the sun? Yarrow Moen looked towards Huangfu Juanxiu suspiciously. Because your highness personally made those clothes for him. Little prince knew that the color of the fabric would be damaged if he were to use fire, so he used the stupidest method possible. Your highness, little prince really cares about your highness, said Huangfu Juanxiu earnestly. Yarrow Moen felt like her heart had been stung by something. She immediately got up to look towards Huangfu Juanxiu. Lead the way. When Huangfu Juanxiu heard this, he naturally understood that Yarrow Moen was looking for his master, so he immediately turned to lead the way. Outside the room, Yarrow Moen took a deep breath, then knocked on the door. Before she could knock a second time, she heard a loud bang. Scram! Don't bother this prince. When Yarrow Moen heard Chu Morshin's thunderous voice, she felt a trace of helplessness. She hadn't had the chance to take care of Da Zhonga, so she wouldn't understand the feelings between mother and son. She also hadn't expected that she would be so important in Chu Morshin's heart. Little prince, Great Chu's noble consort Yarrow has come to see you, reported Huangfu Juanxiu in a low voice with an awkward expression. When Huangfu Juanxiu finished speaking, the room suddenly fell silent. After about the time it took to make a cup of tea, the door suddenly opened. Chu Morshin glared at Huangfu Juanxiu, clearly annoyed that he had spoken up too late. What? Do you still plan on not acknowledging this consort? Yarrow Moen pursed her lips into a smile. Who's not acknowledging you? You're clearly not acknowledging this prince, muttered Chu Morshin as he turned to walk back into the room. Yarrow Moen followed him in. She noticed that there was a puddle of water on the ground, but she didn't see the shattered porcelain pot. Chu Morshin had probably been tidying up the broken pieces in the time it took to make a cup of tea. Yarrow Moen's guess was confirmed when she saw Chu Morshin's bleeding finger. How did this happen? Let this consort have a look. Yarrow Moen frowned and reached out to pull Chu Morshin's finger, but he dodged her. This is nothing, just a small matter, said Chu Morshin proudly as he puffed out his chest. Even a small matter won't do. Hand it over. Yarrow Moen walked over to Chu Morshin fiercely. She ignored Chu Morshin's struggles and pulled him to a seat. Fortunately, there was a white gauze and ointment in the room. Even after Yarrow Moen finished bandaging Chu Morshin's finger, Chu Morshin didn't dare to say another word. Why aren't you saying anything? Yarrow Moen finally realized that the room was completely silent. She lifted her brows and looked towards Chu Morshin. Why didn't I realize that you were this fierce before? Men don't like fierce women. You need to be careful, said Chu Morshin as he looked towards Yarrow Moen seriously. The veins on Yarrow Moen's forehead bulged and her face darkened. Actually, why did you come to Lulan? Yarrow Moen restrained the anger in her eyes and looked towards Chu Morshin warmly. According to the secret envoy's intelligence, the one who should have come to Lulan should have been Chu Morbei. Moreover, with Chu Morshin's personality, how could he possibly win against the experienced and far-sighted King Lulan? Eldest brother told me to come. Chu Morshin looked at the white gauze wrapped around his finger as a hint of light flashed through his eyes. Your eldest brother actually didn't come himself for such an important matter? Yarrow Moen furrowed her brows as she looked towards Chu Morshin in confusion. Can't this prince do something important? Chu Morshin immediately lifted his eyes and looked towards Yarrow Moen angrily. Cough cough. That's not what I meant, explained Yarrow Moen guiltily. That's what you meant. However, eldest brother didn't say that there was an important matter here. He only said that the women of Lulan looked like goddesses and wanted this prince to take a look. However, this prince doesn't think that they're as pretty as eldest brother says, muttered Chu Morshin. Women. Yarrow Moen's eyes narrowed in contemplation, then she suddenly understood. Although Chu Morbei's wishful thinking was brilliant, whether it would succeed or not would depend on the will of the heavens. That night, when Ben Lei came to the guest house to look for Yarrow Moen, he just so happened to run into Yi Junqing, who had just pushed open the door. Long time no see, busy man. Yi Junqing looked coldly at Ben Lei, who had just jumped down from the roof. His voice was very unfriendly. Even though his relationship with Yarrow Moen was no longer as incompatible as fire and water, Yi Junqing still took Ben Lei's betrayal to heart. Prince. This subordinate kowtows in salute to Prince. As Ben Lei spoke, Yi Junqing suddenly heard a sound. He immediately ordered Ben Lei to enter his own room and close the door behind him. Chapter 227. On the jadeite table, the candles on the glazed table flickered, and the fragrance of incense rose in spirals. Yi Junqing lifted his brows as he looked towards Ben Lei, who was kneeling on the ground. You've already retired and are not considered this king's subordinate, so there's no need for such formalities. In Ben Lei's heart, His Highness will always be the master. Ben Lei knelt devoutly in front of Yi Junqing. He was extremely excited. It had been a long time since he last saw Master after returning to the imperial city of Great Chu. This prince cannot accept it, unless you tell this prince, what exactly does Yarrow Moen want to do? Linshi already had a lot of iron ores, so why did she still covet Vic Mountain's iron ores? If she can't get fat in one bite, then how is she going to digest all that iron? This was something that Yi Junqing had never been able to understand. Since Ben Lei's bow has caused Prince to feel a lot of pressure, then Ben Lei has been impolite. Yi Junqing's question was too tricky, so Ben Lei had no choice but to stand respectfully at the side. You! Just as Yi Junqing was about to explode in anger, the door suddenly opened and Yarrow Moen walked in. There's no one in this world who's afraid of money biting their hands. If Moen has the ability to hoard iron ore, then she also has the ability to find buyers. If Prince wishes to know anything, You can directly ask Moen. Don't make things difficult for Ben Lei. Yarrow Moen reflexively glanced at Ben Lei. She was extremely satisfied with his performance. This prince doesn't care about knowing. Yi Junqing glanced at Yarrow Moen resentfully. If prince doesn't want to know, then please take a walk outside. Moen still has important matters to discuss with Ben Lei, suggested Yarrow Moen. This prince's residence. Yi Junqing's eyes widened as he reminded Yarrow Moen out of goodwill. Azure Dragon and the others are nearby. If they see Moen walking around the inn with Ben Lei, wouldn't it be bad? Of course, if Prince is interested in Moen's matter, you can also stay. Moen wouldn't mind. Yarrow Moen didn't wait for Yi Junqing to respond before sitting down at the table. Who's interested? When he got up and passed by Ben Lei, he warned him angrily, next time, find the right place. As he watched Yi Junqing leave, Ben Lei knelt on the ground with a thud. Ben Lei kowtows to thank Master for his grace. Back then, when Yarrow Moen had found Ben Lei, she had said that everything she had Ben Lei plan in Mongyuan was to prepare for Yi Junqing's ascension to the title of emperor in the future. As long as you don't feel wronged. Yarrow Moen pursed her lips. In terms of kindness, she still owed Yi Junqing more. As long as it's for the good of His Highness, Ben Lei will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. Ben Lei said resolutely. I know of your loyalty. Otherwise, I wouldn't have left the matters of Mongyuan to you. Back to the main topic, I asked you to bring the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning to Lulan Kingdom for the iron mine at Vic Mountain. Now that the envoys of Yu, Shu, and Qi have all arrived, I'm sure that King Lulan will bring up his conditions very soon. At that time, we'll wait for an opportunity to act and fight for a share of the spoils with these three countries, instructed Yarrow Moen. This subordinate obeys. Ben Lei cupped his fists and accepted the order. Just as Yarrow Moen expected, the next day, when King Lulan sent people to post the announcement in the guest house, everyone in the guest house had ugly expressions on their faces. By the will of the heavens, the Emperor has decreed that Vic Mountain is rich in iron. Today, we are willing to share the iron mine with the neighboring countries. We will abide by the principle of the highest bidder winning. In addition, if any of the envoys can gain the favor of the Sunshine Princess, we are willing to gift 3,000 iron mountains to you free of charge. King Lulan, they still have the nerve to say that they will share. Ting Feng looked at the announcement and said angrily, May I ask, sir, what does it mean by the highest bidder winning? Huangfu Juanxiu slowly walked to the side of the Lulan guard who was dressed strangely. It's very simple. Even if the iron mine is close to Great Chu, if Shu is willing to pay a high price, then the iron mine will naturally go to the highest bidder, explained the Lulan guard. That's interesting. However, since the iron mine is close to Great Chu, they naturally won't allow Shu to send troops over to mine it, right? Huangfu Juanxiu frowned as he continued to speak. Sir, don't worry. His Majesty has thought of this a long time ago. As long as Sir is willing to pay, Lulan will naturally send people into the mountain to mine it. They will also be responsible for transporting it to Shu. That way, there won't be any conflict between the two countries. Everyone sighed at the Lulan guard's explanation. King Lulan calls this sincerity. If he had said that it would be a trade, we wouldn't have rushed all the way here, said Feng Yihan angrily. King Qi, there's no need to be anxious. The announcement clearly states that if the Sunshine Princess of Lulan favors them, King Lulan will gift 3,000 iron mountains to you free of charge, explained the Lulan guard. So King Lulan was ostensibly inviting the nobles of the three countries to discuss the iron mine, but in reality, he was looking for a son-in-law, said Yi Junqing leisurely. Everyone could see the true intention of the announcement and agreed with Yi Junqing's words. No matter what, the announcement has already been made. Tomorrow, King Lulan will personally escort the Sunshine Princess to the guest house. Farewell. The Lulan guard turned to leave. Inside the guest house, everyone had their own thoughts, but no one left. This prince should have known that Lulan is so poor that all they have left is money. Why would Kubu Dan care about those iron mountains? We really shouldn't have made this trip. We'll head back tomorrow, complained Yi Junqing. That's not entirely true. King Lulan is spending so much to choose a son-in-law, so it's clear that he dotes on the Sunshine Princess a lot. No matter who marries the Sunshine Princess, they'll have King Lulan as their backer. Also, Prince has seen the Sunshine Princess before. The Sunshine Princess can be considered a celestial beauty. Moan advises Prince to consider it carefully. Even if she's as beautiful as a celestial fairy, this prince won't take a second look. You should know this. Yi Juanqing's tone was fierce. That's why it's said that love really is harmful. Eldest sister has already been dead for so long, why hasn't Prince untied the knot in your heart? Said Yarrow Moan carelessly, but a strange feeling flashed through her heart. Yarrow Moan. Yi Juanqing glared at her angrily. Forget it. Even if Prince doesn't want to marry her, we still can't leave. Yarrow Moan returned to the main topic. Why? Yi Juanqing looked towards Yarrow Moan in confusion. Of course it's to stop the Sunshine Princess from falling into the hands of Qi and Shu. Why else do you think they haven't left yet? Also, just because Great Chu doesn't have a chance doesn't mean this consort doesn't have a chance. Yarrow Moan's lips curved into a smile. The moment she saw the announcement, Yarrow Moan knew that her chance had come. You think the Sunshine Princess would like Ben Lei? Yi Juanqing didn't believe it at all. Why wouldn't she? Yarrow Moan's smile became even stranger, causing Yi Juanqing to break out in a cold sweat. The next day, when King Lulan pulled his most beloved daughter, the Sunshine Princess, to the guest house, everyone was blinded by the golden light King Lulan was wearing. Does he have to be so ostentatious? Shouldn't a person be low-key? Yi Juanqing used his hand to shield his eyes as he commented speechlessly. But King Lulan really doesn't have a reason to be low-key. Moan isn't worried about anything else, but wearing a pair of shoes made of pure gold, aren't they heavy? Yarrow Moan was truly worried for this old man who was over 50 years old. Chapter 228. Habit becomes second nature, said Feng Yihan emotionally as he shielded his eyes from the sun. If he had been the one to do this, he might not have been able to stand so steadily. Kubu Dan is very grateful that everyone has traveled thousands of miles to come to my Lulan kingdom. I'm sure everyone has seen the contents of this announcement. Now, we will ask the Sunshine Princess to stay for 10 days. After 10 days, whoever the Sunshine Princess chooses will be the owner of the 3,000 iron mines. His deep voice was firm but not sharp. The elder gently stroked his golden beard and narrowed his eyes slightly. His sharp gaze swept over everyone in front of him. However, when he saw Yarrow Moan, his gaze paused for a moment before returning to normal. Zhura, take off your veil. Kubu Dan turned to look towards his daughter and said dotingly. Why? Didn't Imperial Father say that Zhura isn't allowed to take off her veil before she gets married? Kubu Zhura's childish voice sounded like the sound of nature as she looked towards her Imperial Father with twinkling eyes. That's the custom of our Lulan country, but you're not facing the people of Lulan right now, so you have to follow their custom and be obedient. Kubu Dan caressed his daughter gently, his eyes filled with love. En. Kubu Zhira nodded as if she understood, then slowly took off her veil. At this moment, everyone's gazes were attracted by Kubu Zhira's beauty. Even though there was such a dazzling ingot of gold standing next to her, no one could bear to block their eyes. Although the girl in front of them was only 12 or 13 years old, her face was as beautiful as a fairy's. Her fine, black hair fell to her shoulders and glowed brilliantly under the sunlight. Her flawless white skin was like a freshly peeled egg, so tender and smooth that it seemed like water was about to drip out. Under her slender brows, her eyes twinkled as if they could speak. A pair of dimples were evenly distributed on both sides of her cheeks. When she smiled lightly, the dimples would appear faintly, adding a hint of naughtiness and mischievousness to her. She was as cute as a fairy. This kind of girl was as beautiful and elegant as a moon fairy. It was no wonder that King Lulan doted on her so much. If she had a daughter like this, she would definitely do her best to give the best things to her, Yarrow Moan thought. Dage, take good care of the princess these few days. Don't let anything happen to her. King Lulan nodded slightly when he saw everyone's surprised gazes. An indescribable light flashed through his eyes. He gave Dage a few instructions before turning around and leaving. Imperial Father. Kubujira was just about to turn around and chase after him when Dage stopped her. Princess, look, it's that bad guy. As soon as Dage said this, Kubujira immediately turned around and looked in the direction Dage was pointing at. She saw Chu Morshin standing there with a dark expression on his face. Enemies on a narrow road. This was exactly what Chu Morshin was feeling right now. Why are you here? Kubujira clearly had a very bad impression of Chu Morshin. At this moment, Huangfu Juanxiu, who was standing behind Chu Morshin, had a dark expression on his face. If he had known that this would be the result, he wouldn't have allowed the little prince to go to some gambling house. Now that it looked like those 3,000 iron mines were going to be ruined, and now that things had developed to this point, they could only wait and see if the crown prince could win by a surprise move. What's wrong with me being here? I'm right here. Chu Morshin looked at Kubujira arrogantly, but in the next second, he felt his entire body turn cold. When he lowered his head, he saw that his entire body was soaked in water. The way Chu Morshin puffed up his cheeks and spat out water from his mouth was especially hilarious. Little shrew. This prince will fight it out with you. After being tricked twice by Kubujira, Chu Morshin's dignity had taken a huge hit. Prince, you mustn't. When Huangfu Juanxiu saw that Chu Morshin was about to rush forward, he immediately pulled him back and tried to persuade him. It's great that you're here. This princess didn't know how to spend the next 10 days, but now that you're here, I won't be lonely anymore. Kubujira skipped over to Chu Morshin. Her large, elfin eyes narrowed slightly as her peach-colored lips slowly curved into a meaningful smile. Once Kubujira left, Dage also walked over to Chu Morshin. Little brother, you're out of luck. Dage looked at Chu Morshin sympathetically before chasing after him. They dare to threaten this prince. Huangfu Juanxiu, let go of me. Let go of me, roared Chu Morshin angrily as he kicked in the direction Kubujira had gone. At this moment, everyone in the guest house was dumbstruck. Kubujira's expression just now was definitely the complete opposite of her fairy-like appearance. Everyone sighed. As expected, the difference between a fairy and a devil was just a single thought. This prince isn't seeing things, right? Asked Yi Junqing as he subconsciously rubbed his eyes. It seems like the next 10 days won't be easy for little prince. Yarrow Moan's heart was filled with pity as she looked at the drenched Chu Morshin. Just as Yarrow Moan expected, the night Kubujira arrived, she requested to have a meal with everyone in the guest house. In the guest house's main hall, all sorts of delicacies had already been laid out. Yi Junqing, Yarrow Moan, Feng Yihan, and Chu Morshin were all present, so Kubujira was the only one missing. Yihan has a feeling that we won't be able to stop this meal. Feng Yihan glanced at the awkward Chu Morshin and his lips curved slightly. He had no intention of marrying Kubujira, so he had no intention of currying favor with her. The only reason he had stayed was because he wanted to know the final outcome. Little prince, since you're already here, you might as well take things as they come. It's just a meal, you can't be afraid, right? Yarrow Moan looked towards Chu Morshin gently as she comforted him. Would this prince be afraid of her? What a joke! When he heard Yarrow Moan say this, Chu Morshin immediately dispelled any thoughts of leaving and sat down. Behind him, Huangfu Juanxiu looked towards Yarrow Moan gratefully. He told himself that before the crown prince arrived, there couldn't be any more trouble. Right at this moment, Kubujira walked in from the door. Kubujira was currently dressed in the simple attire of a man from the Central Plains. She was wrapped in a blue robe, had fine brows, phoenix eyes, a fine nose, and cherry lips. Her ink-black hair was tied up with a strand of white silk and she held a folding fan in her hand. She walked with the air of a distinguished young master. Jura has been impolite, I've made everyone wait for a long time. Kubujira twirled the folding fan in a circle before fastening it to the jade belt at her waist. Then she walked to her seat. When she saw the table full of delicacies, her expression instantly darkened. There's food but no wine, how disappointing. Dage, have them bring 10 jugs of the best daughter's red in here, ordered Kubujira loudly. Dage's attire was naturally no different from his master's. He was also dressed in the attire of a man from the Central Plains. When he heard his master's order, not only did Dage not dissuade her, he even asked if 10 jugs was too little. At the side, Yarrow Mowen's cherry lips parted slightly as she looked towards the master and servant pair in disbelief. Were they going to defy the heavens? If she had a choice, she would rather the bright sun princess be as foolish as the rumors said. Perhaps that would be easier to deal with. As they looked at the 20 jugs of Daughter's Red in front of them, everyone's hearts felt a little heavy. Jura knows that the customs of the Central Plains are to make friends with wine. It's truly an honor for Jura to be acquainted with everyone today. Let's not waste any more time. Jura will first toast 3 bowls to show my sincerity. While Kubu Jura was speaking, Dage had already had the servants open the jugs of wine and place large porcelain bowls in front of everyone. Then he filled them up. When Yi Junqing saw Kubu Jira drink 3 bowls on an empty stomach without even blinking, he couldn't help but sigh. His alcohol tolerance wasn't bad, but in front of Kubu Jira, he had to admit defeat. Why aren't you guys drinking? You're not trying to deny it, are you? Kubu Jira put down the porcelain bowl and looked towards everyone suspiciously. You were the one who said to drink 3 bowls first. What does that have to do with us? Said Chu Morshin angrily with a cold harumph. Of course it has to do with you guys. This princess will drink 3 bowls first. After that, it's your turn to drink 3 bowls. You couldn't be afraid, so you don't dare to drink, right? You didn't dare to say so earlier. This princess never makes things difficult for people, especially children. Kubu Jira glanced at Chu Morshin and lifted her brows in disdain. Chapter 229. Who's a kid? Who wouldn't dare? Isn't it just 3 bowls? This prince will accompany you to the end. How could Chu Morshin take this kind of provocation? He immediately gulped down 3 bowls. During the meal, Yi Junqing and Feng Yihan glanced at each other, then drank 3 bowls as well. Because there were servants standing behind them, they couldn't force the alcohol out immediately. Mowen has never been a good drinker. Please forgive me, princess. Yarrow Mowen admitted that she didn't have Kubu Jura's tolerance for alcohol, so she stood up and spoke respectfully. Jura knows Big Sister. Since Big Sister doesn't like to drink, then forget it. When Kubu Jura looked towards Yarrow Mowen, a hint of a smile flashed through her eyes. Yarrow Mowen saw it very clearly. That smile was as brilliant as a flower and incomparably sincere. Mowen thanks Princess for your understanding. Yarrow Mowen knew when to stop. Now it seemed that apart from herself, the other 3's prospects were ominous. There's no point in drinking like this. Why don't we play a finger-guessing game? Dage, fill it up. Kubu Jira suddenly stood up and stepped on the chair with 1 foot. She rolled up her wide sleeves and yelled loudly. Bring it on. Who's afraid of who? After 3 bowls, Chu Morshin was immediately in high spirits and echoed. Yi Junqing and Feng Yihan really wanted to maintain their gentlemanly demeanor, but Kubu Jira had forced them into a corner, so they could only follow suit. Only Yarrow Mowen was sober when everyone else was drunk. Yarrow Mowen couldn't help but sigh as she looked at the chaotic scene in front of her. Fortunately, she had performed outstandingly at the Four Seas Casino. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. After 2 hours, only 5 of the 20 jars of Daughter's Red remained. During this time, Yi Junqing and Feng Yihan had wanted to force the alcohol out while they were relieving themselves, but every time they went out, Kubu Jira would send 2 servants to follow them, so they had no way of doing it. Niang Niang, the esteemed prince seems to have drunk too much. Ting Yu leaned over and whispered in Yarrow Mowen's ear. Yarrow Mowen nodded slightly, then moved closer to Yi Junqing. On the other side, Chu Morshin was playing finger-guessing with Kubu Jira while gulping down large mouthfuls of wine. Feng Yihan had already fallen asleep on the table. Junqing. Yarrow Mowen's heart ached as she looked at Yi Junqing, whose face was completely red. She really wanted to help him leave, but the banquet hadn't ended yet, so leaving first would be rude. Morshin, you're finally willing to appear. Do you know how much this prince missed you? The moment he saw Yarrow Mowen, Yi Juanqing's hazy eyes glistened and tears fell soundlessly down his face. I'm Moan, not Morshine. When Yarrow Moan saw the tears in the corners of Yi Juanqing's eyes, she felt like her chest was being blocked by a ball of cotton wool, making it hard for her to breathe. Moshin, I'm sorry. I didn't know that you would die so miserably. It's my fault, I didn't protect you properly. I'm sorry. Yi Juanqing took Yarrow Moan's hand as tears rolled down his cheeks. Juanqing, how much longer are you going to blame yourself for? Morshine's death has nothing to do with you at all, so why must you confine yourself in this cage? Yarrow Moan didn't struggle out of Yi Juanqing's grasp and her eyes became misty. It's my fault. Morshine, don't leave me again. Don't. Yi Juanqing unconsciously collapsed onto the table. When he closed his eyes, his tears fell onto Yarrow Moan's palm. I won't leave you again. Yarrow Moan's lips moved as tears welled up in her eyes. Her heart was in extreme pain. Right at this time, Chu Morshine suddenly put down his wine bowl and vomited. When Yarrow Moan heard this, she turned around and discovered that Kubu Jira had already disappeared. The only people left were these men lying unconscious on the table. Juanxiu, hurry and help the little prince back to rest. Ting Feng, help Qi Wang back as well. Remember to cook some hangover soup. Ting Yu, come over and help. After Yarrow Moan gave this order, she and Ting Yu helped Yi Juanqing back to his room. On the bed, Yi Juanqing furrowed his brows in pain as he muttered Yarrow Morshine's name in his sleep. Yarrow Moan ordered Ting Yu to go to the kitchen to cook some hangover soup while she sat on the side of the bed. Her heart ached as she looked at Yi Juanqing's pained expression. She couldn't help but reach out to soothe his frown. However, the moment her skin touched his, Yi Juanqing tightly gripped her hand once more. Morshine, it's good that you're back. Don't leave again. Yi Juanqing unconsciously begged as his thick eyelashes became moist. After leaving the room, Yarrow Moan sighed and smiled bitterly. Everyone said that getting drunk could solve 1,000 worries, but after sobering up, would those worries no longer bother people? If not, then why would people lie to themselves? Just as Yarrow Moan was about to return to her room, she suddenly saw a familiar figure sitting alone in the nearby hallway. Under the moonlight, that elegant face seemed to be coated in silver light. It was so beautiful that it was captivating. Princess has good alcohol tolerance, praised Yarrow Moan as she slowly walked to Kubu Jera's side. Kubu Jera was speechless as she quietly looked at the stars in the sky. After a long time, she finally turned her gaze to Yarrow Moan. Does older sister really think that Jira has a good alcohol tolerance? Kubu Jera's eyes were clear and bright, as resplendent as the stars in the sky. Could it be that it's not? Yarrow Moan's heart trembled slightly as she looked towards Kubu Jera in confusion. Of course not, all Jira drank was water. She's just pretending. However, what they drank was daughter's red that had been brewed for 50 years. It's the best wine. The more Kubu Jera said this, the more Yarrow Moan found it inconceivable. She was just a 13-year-old child, but her acting skills were so good that even she didn't suspect that 5 out of the 20 jars of daughter's red were actually water. Why did Princess tell Moan? Aren't you afraid that Moan will tell others? Yarrow Moan looked towards Kubu Jera with interest as her lips curled into a smile. You won't. But even if you tell others, what can they do to this princess? Heh. Kubu Jera raised her head to look at the sky again, her eyes dimming slightly. Actually, if you don't want to get married, you can just tell King Lulan. With how much he dotes on you, he definitely won't force you, said Yarrow Moan gently as she saw through Kubu Jera's thoughts. It's precisely because Imperial Father dotes on me that I don't want to go against his wishes. Furthermore, everything Imperial Father does is for Jera to have a perfect life. Kubu Jera lifted her legs to the railing and wrapped her arms around her calves. She leaned her head against her knees as her eyes sparkled. Could it be? Yarrow Moan was shocked when she heard this. Deep heartache welled up in her eyes. Although Imperial Father hides it very well, Jura knows that from the day she was born, she contracted a strange illness and was destined to not live past 15. It's just that Imperial Father doesn't understand that Jura doesn't want a perfect life. Zhua just wants to be with Imperial Father. Imperial Father likes Zhua's innocence, so there's nothing wrong with Zhua trying her best to act like an idiot. However, this time, Imperial Father is determined to get Zhua married. What should I do? Older sister, Zhua doesn't want to leave Lulan. Even if I die, Zhua wants to die here. The childish voice was filled with sorrow that even Yarrow Moen couldn't bear. When Yarrow Moen saw the sorrow in those eyes, she reached out to tuck in Kubu Zhua's fluttering long hair. Believe in older sister. Older sister will do everything in her power to keep Zhua alive. Zhua will be able to stay happily in Lulan and stay by King Lolan's side. Yarrow Moen's voice was powerful and clear. But what should I do? Zhua already doesn't have any expectations. Everyone was so emotional tonight. When Yarrow Moen saw the tears in Kubu Zhua's eyes, she couldn't help but cry. The heavens were jealous of her beauty, but Zhua was still just a child. When she returned to her room, Yarrow Moen immediately summoned Yin Shui and ordered her to make a trip to Lulan Imperial Palace and investigate everything related to Kubu Zhua. Since she had given Kubu Zhua hope, she would do everything in her power not to disappoint her. Yi Junqing finally woke up at noon the next day. He had already completely forgotten about last night's events. "Prince, you're awake?" Ting Yu heard the commotion and entered the bedroom. She saw Yi Junqing rubbing his forehead as he shook his head. Chapter 230. How much did this prince drink last night? Yi Junqing got off the bed and walked over to the table to pour himself a cup of tea and gulp it down. Quite a bit. 5 jars of Daughter's Red. Prince drank until your mind was muddled. You insisted on dragging my Niang to sleep with you, replied Ting Yu casually. PFFF, cough cough cough. What did you say? This prince's mind was muddled to that extent. Yi Junqing abruptly spat out the water in his mouth as he stared at Ting Yu with wide eyes. That's right. If my Niang hadn't bitten your hand, you wouldn't have let go even if you said you'd die, reported Ting Yu as she removed the breakfast from the tray. When Yi Junqing heard this, he reflexively looked down and saw the 2 rows of teeth marks on the back of his hand. Ahem, your Niang really could do it. All right, you can leave. Yi Junqing's face turned red and he quickly dismissed Ting Yu. If Prince has any instructions, this servant will wait outside. Ting Yu knew that she had achieved her goal and didn't say anything else. Just as she was about to leave, Yi Junqing called her back. You don't need to serve your master, asked Yi Junqing suspiciously. My master went out with the Sunshine Princess early in the morning and hasn't returned yet. How did she hook up with the Sunshine Princess? Yi Junqing was shocked. Perhaps Yarrow Moen really might be able to swindle those 3,000 iron mines out of them. Forgive this servant for being bold, but the Sunshine Princess is innocent and naive while my master is gentle and kind. How could Prince use the word hook up when they're together? Muttered Ting Yu unwillingly. Innocent and naive? Gentle and kind? Who are you talking about? Yi Junqing looked towards Ting Yu in confusion. Ting Yu was speechless. Outside the guest house, the moment Yarrow Moen and Kubu Zhua entered, they saw Chu Morshin running over while rubbing his forehead. Older sister Moen, this prince was looking for you. Why are you with her? Chu Morshin had originally come for Yarrow Moen, but when he saw Kubu Zhua, he instantly went on guard like a fighting cock. Why can't older sister be with this princess? Before Yarrow Moen could say anything, Kubu Zhua walked over to Chu Morshin and lifted her delicate little face arrogantly. You can't. As Chu Morshin said this, he tried to pull Yarrow Moen away. Unexpectedly, Kubu Zhua grabbed Chu Morshin's outstretched hand and stood in front of him, blocking his path. This princess insists on staying with Big Sis. What are you going to do about it? Kubu Zhua looked towards Chu Morshin with an evil smile. The water ball behind her was already raring to go. Forget it. Little prince, go back first. Moen will come find you in a bit. Okay. Yarrow Moen was afraid that Kubu Zhua would act willfully again and again, but not again. If the water ball in Kubu Zhua's hands landed on Chu Morshin again, Yarrow Moen really couldn't guarantee that Chu Morshin wouldn't flip out. Humph. If you're on good terms with her, Then don't come looking for this prince. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but purse her lips as she watched Chu Morshin fling his sleeves and leave. You're already so old, yet you're still jealous. You're just like a child. Kubu Zhera returned to Yarrow Moen's side and commented on Chu Morshin in a serious manner. He's just a child. Yarrow Moen looked towards Kubu Zhera with a smile. That's right. He still has a chance to grow up. A hint of darkness flashed through Kubu Zhera's elf-like eyes. Then, she brought Dage back to her room. Her heart ached faintly as if it was being lightly poked by a silver needle. That pain gradually spread throughout her entire body. When Yarrow Moen pushed open the door and walked into Chu Morshin's room, Chu Morshin was angrily swinging his teacup. When he saw Yarrow Moen, he immediately turned around. Little prince, if you're going to ignore me, then Moen will leave. Yarrow Moen turned around tentatively and looked at Chu Morshin with interest. You're clearly the one who's ignoring me, yet you're still trying to blame it on this prince. When Chu Morshin saw that Yarrow Moen was about to leave, he immediately turned around and angrily rebuked her. She's a young lady, so you should at least let her have her way. Yarrow Moen smiled as she sat down next to Chu Morshin and poured him a cup of tea. Young lady? Have you ever seen a young lady drink 5 jars of daughter's red? Which young lady dared to splash water on this prince more than once? Chu Morshin was getting more and more angry. Ahem. Little prince, did you have something urgent to discuss with me just now? Yarrow Moen couldn't help but cough. Indeed, using the word young lady to describe Kubu Zhera was a bit biased. I was so angry at you that I forgot. Oh, right. Big brother is coming, said Chu Morshin excitedly. Yarrow Moen was shocked when she heard this. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the teapot. You don't seem happy, asked Chu Morshin suspiciously when he saw that Yarrow Moen's expression was strange. This is truly a delightful piece of news. What is he here for? Could it be that he wants to marry the Sunshine Princess as the Crown Prince's consort? Happy. The duck that was about to fall into her hands was suddenly snatched away by someone else. What reason did she have to be happy? There's no way Big Brother would like that little shrew. The only person in this world that's worthy of Big Brother is already dead. But don't be discouraged. You're big sister Morshin's younger sister, so perhaps Big Brother will look up to you, said Chu Morshin as if he was trying to throw himself at her. There's really no need for this consort to look up to him. Yarrow Moen was extremely speechless. Anyone who caught the eye of that god of plague would definitely die a horrible death. That's because you've never seen Big Brother. In this world, any woman who has seen Big Brother before would be completely smitten by him, said Chu Morshin solemnly. More like scared out of their wits. You still haven't told me what is here for, asked Yarrow Moen solemnly, returning to the topic at hand. Of course it's for those 3,000 iron mines. Shu has a strong army, but they're lacking in weapons. Big Brother definitely won't give up on the iron mines here. Chu Morshin didn't hold back at all. Although Yarrow Moen still wanted to ask about some of Great Shu's secrets, she felt that it wouldn't be very kind, so she held back. Does he have a better plan besides marrying Zhaoyang Princess? Yarrow Moen seemed to be testing him. This prince doesn't know, but Big Brother won't easily make a move. Chu Morshin looked towards Yarrow Moen. Yarrow Moen completely agreed with this point, but she was sincerely praying that Chu Morbei would suffer a crushing defeat this time. After leaving Chu Morshin's room, Yarrow Moen went straight to Yi Juanqing's room. You're awake. When Yarrow Moen saw Yi Juanqing sitting alone in the main hall and looking at the letter in his hands with a serious expression, she walked over and glanced at the paper. His Majesty clearly knows that this prince's heart belongs to someone else, yet he still wants this prince to marry Zhaoyang. Yi Juanqing tore the paper apart in anger as a cold light flashed through his eyes. That's not necessarily the case. Didn't the paper say that it would be the same if Prince could stop someone else from marrying Zhaoyang? Yarrow Moen slowly sat down in front of Yi Juanqing. How could this prince stop someone else from marrying Zhaoyang? Yi Juanqing didn't think much of it. Prince might not be able to, but Moen will definitely be able to. Prince doesn't need to worry about this, said Yarrow Moen confidently. Chapter 231. How could this prince have forgotten? You're drooling over those 3,000 iron mines. Yi Junqing trusted Yarrow Moen. If she said it was possible, then it was definitely possible. Unknowingly, Yi Junqing's trust in Yarrow Moen had already disappeared. Moen isn't the only one drooling over it. Chu Morbei is coming. Yarrow Moen sighed heavily as her eyes darkened. This isn't good news. Yi Junqing's impression of Chu Morbei had never been good. Right at this time, Yin Shui suddenly appeared in the main hall. What did you find? Yarrow Moen's eyes brightened when she saw Yin Shui. Reporting to Master, this subordinate found that the Sunshine Princess has been afflicted with a strange disease called blood clot ever since she was born. This disease is extremely rare and has only been recorded in the book Ghost Path from 300 years ago. The person afflicted with this disease will have all the blood in their body gradually coagulate over time until it stiffens and breaks. During this period of time, if they consume blood celery, they'll be no different from a normal person before the disease flares up. However, blood celery doesn't cure the root of the problem. If the patient suddenly flares up, there's no way to save them. However, there's a prescription recorded in this book, reported Yin Shui. Is it a prescription to cure blood clot? Asked Yarrow Moen impatiently. Yes, it's written on the prescription that as long as the pearl of the Eastern Sea, the coral of the Western Sea, the dragon of the Southern Sea, and the mermaid of the Northern Sea are gathered and fed with the blood of resurrection, this disease will be cured, continued Yin Shui. Yin Shui, your storytelling skills are getting better. If you don't become a hidden guard one day, you'll definitely be able to make a fortune with this ability. Yi Junqing nodded approvingly. Prince is flattering me. However, what Yin Shui said is the truth. In Lulan Imperial Hospital, there is a medical center that specializes in researching blood clots. Not only does it contain personal records of Kubu Jura's physical condition from birth to now, it also contains information on blood clots. This is especially true since it's filled with strange treasures from the sea. This subordinate is stupid and can't tell what those things are, said Yin Shui. There's no need to look to know that those things aren't what King Lulan is looking for. Otherwise, it wouldn't be placed there. Yarrow Moen's expression was grave. She had never heard of the things in that prescription before. No wonder Kubu Jira had said that she had no expectations. Are you telling the truth? The Sunshine Princess actually had such a strange disease. How is this possible? When Yi Junqing saw that Yin Shui had no intention of teasing him, he frowned deeply. Every time he thought about how such a Pharaoh-like girl would shatter like a crystal, he couldn't help but feel stifled. When has Prince ever seen Yin Shui joke around? Yin Shui, leave for now and secretly ask the Yin clan for help in finding out more about the recipe. Yarrow Moen leaned weakly against the chair, her heart aching inexplicably. She was going to give up just like this. She couldn't do it. The Eastern Sea has a jade blood pearl and the Western Sea has a blood coral. There are traces of those too, but dragon mermaids are legends, so how are we going to find them? Especially the resurrection blood. I really don't understand how Gui Daozi, as a doctor, could come up with such nonsense. Yi Junqing's brows were tightly furrowed as his hands instinctively clenched into fists. That might not be the case. Since Gui Daozi said it, then it means that these 5 things definitely exist in this world. However, these rare things can only be found by chance. Even if we were given 10 years, we still might not be able to find them. A trace of sorrow flashed through Yarrow Moen's eyes. That night, with the morning breeze and waning moon, a shrill cry suddenly rang out in the quiet guest house. Princess! What's wrong? Someone come! Something's happened to the princess. Dage's voice rang out from the guest house. Everyone rushed to Kubu Jura's room. What happened? Yarrow Moen was the first to rush into the room. When she saw Kubu Jira lying on the couch with a deathly pale complexion and her arms stiff and veins popping out, Yarrow Moen's heart felt like it had been thrown into a deep, cold lake. Even though she had already mentally prepared herself, Kubu Jura's sudden illness still made her cry. Older sister, don't cry. Jura knew that this day would come. Thankfully, Jura is still in Lulan. On the couch, Kubu Jira smiled delicately. Her eyes shone resplendently and she was so beautiful that she didn't seem like a mortal. Have you been poisoned? Juanxiu. Hurry and bring this prince's 100-herb pill. Hurry and go. When Chu Morshin saw Kubu Zhu's bloodshot arms, he immediately panicked and ordered sternly. It's useless. No matter how good the medicine is, it won't be able to cure my illness. Also, don't you hate me? If I die, then you can monopolize older sister Moan. Kubu Zhu smiled faintly. Her two dimples were indescribably beautiful. Who says I hate you? Chu Morshin's voice was a little hoarse as tears welled up in his eyes. Don't all look so sad. Don't worry, even if Zhura dies in the guest house, Imperial Father won't make things difficult for you guys. It's just that Zhura can't do anything about the 3,000 iron mines. When Yarrow Moan heard Kubu Zhu's words, her heart ached even more. When she lowered her eyes, tears began to fall. Who cares about the iron mines? Don't worry, this prince will save you. Chu Morshin wiped the corners of his eyes and walked forward to carry Kubu Zhu. Don't move. When Yarrow Moan saw this, she abruptly stood up and blocked Chu Morshin's way. This prince is going to carry her to the Imperial Hospital. How can she just lie here? Said Chu Morshin anxiously. Don't move, if you carry me, Zhura will definitely lose her arms. Older sister Moan already knew? Kubu Zhu looked towards Yarrow Moan in surprise. Knew what? Older sister Moan, what exactly is going on? A hint of bitterness flashed through Yarrow Moan's eyes when she saw Chu Morshin's anxious gaze. As a result, she repeated Yin Shui's words to everyone present. At this moment, she only hoped that someone would know where the 5 treasures were. Even if there was only a sliver of hope, she did not want to give up. How could there be such a strange illness in this world? The pearl of the Eastern Sea, the coral of the Western Sea, the dragon of the Southern Sea, the mermaid of the Northern Sea, and the blood of resurrection, what exactly are they? Who has them? Asked Chu Morshin anxiously when he saw that the girl's face was becoming increasingly pale. The pearl of emerald blood and the blood coral are in Lulan, but this old man hasn't been able to find the other 3 even after 12 years. An elderly voice suddenly came from outside the door. Everyone moved to the sides when they heard it. They saw Kubu Dan stagger into the room with the help of his attendants until he reached Kubu Zhu's bed. Imperial Father, your daughter has troubled you all these years. I'm sorry. At this moment, Kubu Dan seemed to have aged 10 years and was no longer as dazzling as before. Oh God. Kubu Dan, please take my life. Leave your daughter behind. Zhura is still young. Zhura, our Zhia. Tears streamed down Kubu Dan's face as he stroked Kubu Zhu's bloodshot arm with trembling hands. Imperial Father, don't be like this. Zhura is already very satisfied. Being able to be your daughter for 13 years is already a blessing from God. Zhura doesn't want to be too greedy. Imperial Father, when Zhura reaches the heavens, I'll definitely pray for Imperial Father every day. Kubu Zhu looked towards her father with a smile as tears streamed down her face. She also wanted to stroke her father's white beard, but what could she do? Her hands couldn't move. No. Daughter, Imperial Father doesn't want you to die. I don't want to. At this moment, Kubu Dan no longer had the dignity of an emperor. All he had was the sorrow and despair of a father who was about to lose his daughter. Right at this moment, Huangfu Juanxiu hurriedly walked in. Reporting to King Lulan, our emperor has ordered this humble subject to present these 2 items. When everyone heard this, they all looked towards Huangfu Juanxiu. They saw that he was holding a jade tray with 2 strange items on it. What did Big Brother send over? Asked Chu Morshin suspiciously as he walked over to Huangfu Juanxiu with a frown. Chapter 232. Replying Your Highness, these 2 are the dragon of the South Sea and the mermaid of the North Sea. Everyone was shocked, especially King Lulan, who had been prostrating by the bed. He immediately got up and walked over to Huangfu Juanxiu, staring at the things on the tray in shock. Are you talking about the dragon of the South Sea and the mermaid of the North Sea? King Lulan's eyes lit up in despair. That's right. My emperor went through many difficulties to find these two precious items. I hope I can do my best, replied Huangfu Juanxiu firmly. Good. Good. Come. Hurry and send these two items to the Imperial Hospital. Have them brew the medicine according to the prescription. That's great. Our Jira can be saved. There's hope. King Lulan cried tears of joy, tears gushing out of his eyes. The items he had spent more than 10 years searching for were right in front of him now. How could he not be excited? The attendants didn't dare to tarry and immediately grabbed the tray from Huangfu Juanxiu's hands as if it was a treasure and sprinted towards the imperial palace. Even if we gather these 4 herbs, we still lack the blood of resurrection as a catalyst. Resurrection? What does that mean? Could it be that it's resurrection in someone else's body? Chu Morshin furrowed his brows in thought. The speaker had no intention, but the listener took it to heart. When Yarrow Moen heard the words resurrection in someone else's body, her heart trembled and waves of shock surged through her eyes. If it really was resurrection in someone else's body, then resurrection blood. As she thought about this, Yarrow Moen silently retreated from the crowd and returned to her room. Yin Shui. Yarrow Moen hurriedly called for Yin Shui when she returned to her room. Master, this subordinate already had Azure Dragon and the others sleep. They'll only wake up tomorrow at noon, replied Yin Shui solemnly. Well done. Do you have a dagger? Yarrow Moen nodded, then took a porcelain bowl from the table and looked towards Yin Shui. Master, this is... Yin Shui held the dagger in front of Yarrow Mo Wan, but she didn't expect that in the next second, Yarrow Mo Wan would make a cut on her wrist. Dark red blood gushed out of the wound and flowed into the porcelain bowl. As Yin Shui looked at Yarrow Moen's gradually paling complexion, her heart ached. She immediately prepared medicine and a white gauze. It's fine. Give this bowl of blood to Ben Lei and tell him. Yarrow Mo Wan whispered a few words into Yin Shui's ear before handing the bowl of blood to her. This subordinate obeys. After Yin Shui finished treating Yarrow Moen's wounds, she disappeared from the room with the blood. When Yarrow Moen returned to Kubu Zhura's room, she didn't attract too much attention. It's only been a while, but it's already so serious. Yarrow Moen's heart ached as she looked at Kubu Zhura's bloodshot face and tears welled up in her eyes. Are you okay? Why do you look so pale? At the side, Feng Yihan looked towards Yarrow Moen worriedly. He reflexively moved to protect Yarrow Moen's shoulders, but at almost the same time, Yi Junqing suddenly pulled Yarrow Moen over. Where did you go? You. Yi Junqing saw the cold sweat on Yarrow Moen's forehead, so he immediately lowered his eyes and loosened his grip. Sure, I'm fine. Has the princess's medicine not been delivered yet? Yarrow Moen looked at Yi Junqing meaningfully. Although Yi Junqing understood what Yarrow Moen was thinking, he still felt extremely guilty. At the side, Feng Yihan watched the exchange between Yarrow Moen and Yi Junqing and a trace of bitterness flashed through his lips. Right at this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. Reporting to your majesty, there's an envoy outside who claims to be from Mystery Nation. He says he's willing to offer up the resurrection blood. The moment the guard said this, everyone in the room sighed. They all felt that Kubu Zhura's life wasn't fated to die. Resurrection blood? Hurry and invite him in. Hurry and invite him in. Zhura, don't be afraid, Imperial Father won't let you die, he won't. King Lulan wiped away the tears in his eyes as he looked at Kubu Zhura, who was no longer able to speak. His heart ached to the extreme. Not long after the guard left, Ben Lei walked in wearing strange clothing with a black veil covering his face. Mystery Envoy Xiao Tian kowtows in salute to King Lulan. Ben Lei held the golden box in his hands and bowed respectfully. Hurry and get up. Your Mystery Nation's envoy. Where's the resurrection blood? King Lulan no longer cared about etiquette and hurriedly helped Ben Lei up. Reporting to King Lulan, in Xiao Tian's hands is the rarely seen resurrection blood. As Ben Lei spoke, he opened the golden box to reveal a white porcelain goblet that was flowing with dark red blood. Is this really resurrection blood? King Lulan carefully picked up the white porcelain goblet and looked towards Ben Lei suspiciously. It's absolutely true. Ben Lei nodded firmly. At the side, Yi Junqing looked at the bowl of blood with a troubled expression. He felt an indescribable pain in his heart. At this moment, the imperial physician of the Lulan kingdom had already brought in the medicinal soup. When the imperial physician opened the porcelain lid, the entire room was instantly filled with a refreshing fragrance. When one inhaled it, one would feel refreshed and refreshed. Your Majesty, the medicine is ready. However, the medicinal catalyst, said the imperial physician respectfully as he lifted the bowl of resurrection blood in front of King Lulan. King Lulan stared speechlessly at the bowl of resurrection blood for a long time before finally pouring all of it into the medicinal soup. The moment the blood mixed with the medicinal liquid, the fragrance suddenly disappeared. Everyone felt uneasy. Your Majesty, could this blood be fake? Otherwise, why would the fragrance disappear? This medicine can't be given to the princess. Dage choked up as he looked towards King Lulan worriedly. This is Juras' last chance. We won't give it up. Go away. Kubu Dan personally fed the medicinal soup to Kubu Juras' mouth as tears fell silently. Currently, Kubu Juras' face was completely bloodshot. No one would be able to connect her to that fairy-like beauty. As the medicine ran out, everyone was praying that the heavens would be merciful and not take away such a fresh life. Don't let down a father's love. Time passed second by second. The room was silent and everyone's gazes were focused on Kubu Jira. When they saw that the blood on her face was gradually disappearing, the entire room erupted in cheers. Imperial Father. The word Imperial Father was enough to make everyone cry. When she returned to her room, Yarrow Moen sighed lightly. She was just about to drink a cup of tea when Yi Junqing charged in aggressively. Yarrow Moen, you're crazy. There's so much blood, you don't want to live anymore. Yarrow Moen glanced at Ting Yu. Ting Yu naturally understood and walked out to close the door. You guessed it. Yarrow Moen sipped her tea indifferently as she looked towards Yi Junqing with raised brows. Is it that hard to guess? Your wrist is injured and the blood came from Ben Lei. It's obvious. As Yi Junqing spoke, he slammed a bottle of top-notch medicine onto the table. One bowl of blood for 3,000 iron mines, it's worth it. Yarrow Moen put down the teacup and casually picked up the medicine Yi Junqing brought. She remembered that Yi Junqing had once told her that this medicine was personally concocted by him. Not just anyone had the right to use it. You've really gone crazy thinking about money. Also, how do you know that your blood will definitely be effective? When Yi Junqing saw that Yarrow Moen was struggling to remove the white gauze, he decided to just squat down next to her and help. Then he applied the medicine to Yarrow Moen's wound. It's precisely because I don't know that Moen gambled. As long as we can save Jiaoyang Princess, Mystic Country's contributions will naturally be undeniable. At that time, even if we have to give half of the 3,000 iron mines to Chu Morbei, there's still 1,500 that can go to Meng Yuan. 1,500. Yarrow Moen's lips curled into a smile, unable to disguise the joy in her heart. I really don't understand why you love money so much. Is money more important than your life? You're not allowed to do that next time. Yi Junqing glanced at Yarrow Moen speechlessly. Chapter 233. If a bowl of blood could be exchanged for 1,500 iron mines, then Moen would really hope to encounter more good things like this. Be gentler. Yarrow Moen felt a slight pain in her wrist and lowered her eyes to glare at Yi Junqing. With 1,500 iron mines supporting you, do you still know pain? Yi Junqing harumphed coldly. Just as he was about to get up, Ting Yu suddenly walked in. Your Highness, this bowl of blood-replenishing soup was sent over by King Qi. Ting Yu carefully placed the bowl in front of Yarrow Moen. When Yarrow Moen saw Yi Junqing's cold expression, she deliberately picked up the bowl. King Qi is too considerate. This prince will find a chance to thank you someday. You can leave. Yarrow Moen dismissed Ting Yu and took a small sip of the thick soup. This prince has also given you medicine, but you haven't thanked this prince yet, complained Yi Junqing as he sat back down in a huff. How is Prince the same as King Qi? At the end of the day, King Chi is still an outsider. Yarrow Moen seemed to have no intention of replying. His heart instantly felt refreshed. Yi Juanqing's brows relaxed as he nodded firmly. That's right. He's an outsider, it's good that you know that. When Yarrow Moen saw Yi Juanqing smile, she felt a trace of warmth in her heart. 2 days later, Kubu Jira was finally able to get out of bed and walk around. She was as beautiful as before, but even more beautiful than before. In order to express his gratitude to Great Shu and Mystery Country, King Lulan decided to split the 3,000 iron mines into 2 portions and gift them to Great Shu and Mystery Country. Afterwards, due to her relationship with Kubu Jira, Yarrow Moen also received an official letter of eternal friendship between Lulan and Great Shu. That night, Yarrow Moen accompanied Kubu Jira in the hallway as they counted the stars. The wind blew and the leaves rustled, adding a hint of serenity to the atmosphere. If it weren't for older sister, Jira would already be a star in the sky. Kubu Jira's eyes were clear and bright like shooting stars. Princess should be thanking the Crown Prince of Shu and that envoy from Mystery Country. Moen believes that she didn't do anything, replied Yarrow Moen indifferently. But Jura remembers how resolute older sister was when you told Jura that no matter what method you had to use, you would let Jura live. Jura believes that if it wasn't for older sister's words, Jura might not have had the chance to sit here and look at the stars with older sister. Kubu Jura turned to look at Yarrow Moen, her bright eyes shining with a brilliant light. Perhaps. Yarrow Moen didn't argue any further. She just looked at the stars, her heart filled with complicated feelings. Imperial Father said that Big Sister looks very much like someone. Just this resemblance is enough for Imperial Father to grant Big Sister a wish. If Big Sister has a request in the future, you can come to Lulan to find Imperial Father. He will definitely help you. Kubu Jura's childish tone was exceptionally firm. Like who? Yarrow Moen's heart trembled as she asked suspiciously. Back then, Imperial Father was running around everywhere in search of blood celery. When he reached Meng Yuan, he suddenly encountered bandits. Although Imperial Father had many experts by his side, they were all ambushed and captured. Fortunately, a caravan passed by and rescued Imperial Father. Then they even sent someone to escort Imperial Father to a safe place. Although Imperial Father doesn't know that person's name, he remembers her caravan, Yarrow Manifest Trade. Kubu Jira narrated the truth with gratitude in her eyes. Heh. Then didn't Moen take advantage of that caravan? Yarrow Moen laughed lightly. This Yarrow Manifest Trade was her caravan in Meng Yuan. She never expected that she would have such a chance encounter with King Lulan. There's a snake. Kubu Jira suddenly cried out. Before Yarrow Moen could react, a figure shot out from the shadows. Where? Chu Morshin suddenly pulled out his sword and rushed in front of Yarrow Moen and Kubu Jira as he shouted. Even if there really was one, you've already scared it away. Kubu Jira giggled. Her laughter was as clear as the sounds of nature. Her face, which was covered in moonlight, was especially breathtakingly beautiful. All right. You actually dared to lie to this prince. Chu Morshin sheathed his sword in a fit of pique and turned to sit next to Yarrow Moen. Since little prince is here, why are you hiding? Yarrow Moen looked at the 2 children next to her and felt a bit of bitterness in her heart. Who's hiding? This prince is just passing by, retorted Chu Morshin stubbornly. Passing by? Then you can leave. Why are you sitting down? Kubu Jira blinked as she looked towards Chu Morshin. Every word she said could choke someone to death. You. Chu Morshin puffed up his cheeks but didn't know how to argue. All right, we're going to separate tomorrow, but you're still acting like enemies. Yarrow Moen patted Chu Morshin lightly. Older sister Moen, we're going to separate tomorrow. I don't know when I'll be able to see you again. Chu Morshin looked at Yarrow Moen with a bit of heartache and said reluctantly. There will always be a chance. Yarrow Moen knew that Chu Morshin couldn't bear to part with her, but how could she bear to part with them? All good things must come to an end. The next day, after Yarrow Moen and the others bid farewell to King Lulan and Sunshine Princess, they set out on their way back to Yu. Older sister Moen, goodbye. Outside Yi City, Chu Morshin stuck his head out of a luxurious carriage and waved as he shouted. Yarrow Moen lifted the curtains of the carriage. The moment their eyes met, Yarrow Moen saw a familiar figure and her body involuntarily tensed up. That was a pitilessly enchanting face. Flawless white jade facial features were exquisite to the point of being impeccable. His long, jet-black hair draped over his shoulders like a waterfall, and the bangs in front of his forehead fluttered in the wind, bringing with them a breathtaking beauty and vicissitudes of life. What was most irresistible were those long, narrow, and bewitching eyes. His unique brown pupils gave off a boundless sense of mystery and bewitchment. At this moment, that pair of demonic and charming eyes looked towards Yarrow Moen's direction like a wisp of smoke. When he looked around, he had the power to turn the world upside down. Especially the curve of his thin lips. Although he clearly had a smile on his face, Yarrow Moen felt a chill run down her spine. It's Chu Morbei. Since he's here, why didn't he show himself in Lulan? Yi Junqing followed Yarrow Moen's gaze and looked over suspiciously. That scoundrel never plays by the rules, said Yarrow Moen through gritted teeth as she lifted the curtains of the carriage. There are very few women who can say such crude things after seeing him. Yi Junqing lifted his brows as he looked towards Yarrow Moen, feeling inexplicably pleased. Half of the duck that was already in your hands was snatched away by someone else. If it was Prince, you'd probably curse even more fiercely than Moen. Yarrow Moen shrugged angrily. This prince believes that Chu Morbei must be thinking the same thing right now, guessed Yi Junqing. Achoo, achoo. The moment Yi Junqing closed his mouth, Yarrow Moen started sneezing again and again without end. The fine agarwood emitted a faint fragrance. Inside the carriage, Chu Morshin was sitting next to Chu Morbei like a frosted eggplant. He seemed to be deep in thought. Yarrow Moen isn't a good person. Try not to interact with her too much in the future. Chu Morbei's clear voice flowed out of his mouth like rain pattering on celadon. His long and narrow phoenix eyes shone with a biting cold light. She's very good. If Big Brother gets to know her better, you'll realize that she's just as smart as older sister Morshin. Chu Morshin rarely refuted Chu Morbei's words, but he wanted to clarify this matter with Yarrow Moen. The Yarrow Moen that you think is very good just now called your imperial brother a scoundrel. Also, she's not smart, she's just good at scheming, corrected Chu Morbei sternly. Chapter 234. In any case. Morshin believes that she's a good person. Muttered Chu Morshin quietly. He didn't doubt his older brother's words. His older brother had always done a lot of lip reading, but this didn't affect Chu Morshin's trust in Yarrow Moen. Chu Morbei's long and narrow eyes flickered with an enigmatic light. Yarrow Moen was able to grasp his younger brother's weakness in such a short amount of time. On the way, Yarrow Moen repeated the same trick. She secretly had Yang Nanxing's people block Azure Dragon's path while she and Yi Junqing went sightseeing back to Great Chu Imperial City. Her relaxed heartstrings tightened the moment they entered the city. She could allow herself to temporarily relax, but she wouldn't allow herself to indulge in the slightest. Thus, when they returned to the Imperial City, Yarrow Moen's heart also calmed down. According to Liu Xing's report, a lot of new things had happened while she was gone. Other than Yi Hongyi favoring Yarrow Sulwan once more, the palace maids' corpses would occasionally appear in the palace. The only thing that made Yarrow Moen happy was that Mingyu had been transferred to the pill refining room to work. Your Highness, 2 days ago, His Majesty had decreed that Yarrow Sulwan would be conferred the title of noble consort. Li Yarrow Sulwan has become more and more domineering in the palace, reported Liu Xing. How arrogant can a paper tiger be? What do you mean by female corpses appearing in the palace from time to time? Yarrow Moen wasn't surprised that Yarrow Sulwan had been favored once more. This servant has also secretly investigated this matter. I found that these palace maids either bled from all orifices or their faces were covered in bruises. It was extremely terrifying. This servant originally suspected that it was An Bingshan, but this is different from An Bingshan's previous methods. Also, An Bingshan has been staying in the pill refining room and rarely comes out, so This servant makes a bold guess that these palace maids most likely ended up like this because they were testing medicine, replied Liu Xing solemnly. Temph, Yi Hongyi wants to live forever, yet he wants so many innocent people to die early. The sins he has committed, even dying 1,000 times wouldn't be enough to pay for them. Yarrow Mo Wan's gaze gradually turned cold. Her jade fingers tightly gripped the armrest as she coldly rebuked. Right at this time, Ting Yu jogged in from outside. Reporting to your ladyship, there is news from the prison that the Prime Minister has contracted a serious illness and is clamoring to find a doctor. The jailers did not dare to make the decision on their own and just reported it to His Majesty. His Majesty seemed to have sent Imperial Physician Li to the prison. Ting Yu reported everything she had heard. If one's heart is black, how can one be cured? This consort is a bit tired. You too can withdraw. Yarrow Mo Wan dismissed Liu Xing and Ting Yu somewhat tiredly, then got up and walked into the bedroom. Around midnight, the night was dark and windy, and dark clouds covered the moon. Two figures swished through the sky and vanished in an instant. Hey, did you see anything just now? The first jailer gulped and looked at the roof timidly. Yes. Jailer B said in all seriousness. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and strike the gong. When Jailer A was about to raise his hammer, he was stopped by Jailer B with a grunt. What could there be? Aren't they just some wandering ghosts? Our heavenly prison doesn't have much, but there are plenty of wronged ghosts. Don't make a fuss about nothing. Jailer A couldn't help but wipe away his cold sweat when he heard Jailer B say this. Yarrow Mo Wan felt an indescribable feeling as she looked at the disheveled Prime Minister Yarrow, who was lying on the floor drinking medicine. Does father feel any regret for ending up like this? Yarrow Mo Wan looked indifferently at Yarrow Enchanting, who was in the prison. There was no emotion in her voice. Perhaps it was because of Kubu Zhu's influence, but Yarrow Mo Wan's heart wavered slightly. Mo Li, you slut. You actually dare to appear in front of this old man. This old man will beat you to death. Beat you to death. The moment he heard the voice, Yarrow Enchanting abruptly raised his head and glared at Yarrow Moan. At this moment, Yarrow Moan clearly saw that Yarrow Enchanting's face was covered in 7 or 8 fist-sized pustules, as well as his arms and legs. How did Mo Li betray Lord? Does Lord want to kill Mo Li this much? Yarrow Mo Wan's heart suddenly turned cold and her clear eyes were covered in frost. Medicine. This old man wants to take medicine. Damned Mo Li. If it wasn't for those 2 bastards you gave birth to, this old man wouldn't have ended up in this state. This old man will kill you and those 2 bastards of yours. This old man can't die. I can't die. Yarrow Enchanting crawled over like a dog and used his tongue to lick the medicine on the floor as he muttered. Master, he's probably been bitten by a rat and is already delirious. Beside her, Yin Shui said in a low voice. Do Xianglan. Why are you here? Looking for Lu Yuxin? Ha ha ha. You're late. That pretty boy has already been killed by this old man. He died a horrible death. Don't even think about finding him again. Yarrow Enchanting looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan with a sinister expression and a strange smile. This is medicine. Eat it and all of your wishes will come true. Yarrow Mo Wan took out a green porcelain bottle from her sleeve and expressionlessly threw it into the prison. Medicine. This old man's medicine. This old man wants to live. This old man wants to be the Prime Minister. This old man wants to have a son. Yarrow Enchanting picked up the medicine that Yarrow Mo Wan had thrown in like it was a treasure. He abruptly opened the bottle and swallowed it in one go. Master. Yin Shui looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan worriedly. This consort still wasn't ruthless enough. Let's go. Yarrow Mo Wan looked at the crazed Yarrow Enchanting with dim eyes. In this life, she had never hoped to have a father like Kubu Dan, but she had never expected to have a father like Yarrow Enchanting either. The news of Yarrow Enchanting's sudden death came from the heavenly prison in the early morning of the next day. The Prime Minister of a dynasty had actually died so miserably. He hadn't even been buried in a coffin before being thrown into a mass grave by the prison guards with grass. In the Imperial Garden, Yarrow Mo Wan was sitting at the edge of the pavilion with Fluffy in her arms. She was leaning against the railing, feeling indescribably depressed. Ting Yu said you didn't eat breakfast, so this is for you. Yarrow Mo Wan revealed a faint smile as she looked at the pastry in front of her. When did Prince learn to care about Mo Wan? Yarrow Mo Wan took the pastry and lifted her brows as she looked towards Yi Junqing. This prince has always cared about you, but... Before Yi Junqing could finish, Fluffy suddenly jumped up in fright. Yarrow Mo Wan hadn't been paying attention for a moment and Fluffy had scratched the back of her hand, leaving behind a bloody mark. TSK, how could younger sister be so careless? You're making the esteemed prince's heart ache. At this time, a radiant Yarrow Sulwan was walking over with a fierce dog. Moan, are you alright? When Yi Junqing saw the scratch on the back of Yarrow Mo Wan's hand, he frowned and glared at Yarrow Sulwan. You did it on purpose. Yi Junqing rebuked harshly. That's right, this consort did it on purpose. However, this consort was also doing it for your own good. It's broad daylight, yet you two don't know how to be discreet and actually brazenly have a rendezvous in the Imperial Garden. This consort has seen it, but if His Majesty sees it, there won't be any way for you to live. Yarrow Sulwan swayed as she walked forward, but the dog next to her had already charged towards Yarrow Mo Wan. Wu Yarrow Sulwan was furious when she saw the dog that Yi Junqing had kicked away struggle for a bit before raising its tail. Yi Junqing, how dare you? You actually dared to kill this consort's beloved dog. Yarrow Sulwan rebuked angrily. This prince not only dared to kill that animal, this prince also dared to kill you. Every time Yi Junqing thought of Yarrow Morshin's death, he really wanted to snap Yarrow Sulwan's neck. Chapter 235. Prince, don't worry. Good and evil will be repaid in the end. It's just a matter of time. Prince, Moan, and second older sister still have things to talk about, so please return first. Yarrow Moan looked meaningfully at Yi Junqing. Although Yi Junqing was angry, he knew that Yarrow Moan wouldn't let Yarrow Sulwan off so easily, so he turned to leave. Only after Yi Junqing had walked far away did Yarrow Sulwan dare to move. Just now, Yi Junqing's murderous eyes had given her quite a fright. Since second older sister knows to be afraid, then you should obediently stay in Pure Flower's palace. The esteemed prince isn't as good-tempered as Moan, said Yarrow Moan gently as she used a handkerchief to wipe the scratches on the back of her hand. Yarrow Moan, you never expected this, right? Not only did Ben Gong not die, Ben Gong was actually promoted to noble consort. How about it? Are you very disappointed? Yarrow Sulwan walked towards Yarrow Moan as if she was courting death. Rather than shackling you in Pure Flower's palace until both sides suffer, it's better to temporarily take you in as a confidant. Moan had expected that Yi Hongyi would think of this method. However, second older sister wouldn't be so stupid as to think that Yi Hongyi truly dotes on you, right? Yarrow Moan looked at Yarrow Sulwan with ridicule. Why wouldn't he be sincere? His Majesty and Ben Gong are already grasshoppers on the same boat. His Majesty doesn't have any other choice. Yarrow Sulwan looked towards Yarrow Moan disapprovingly. Who knew how much effort she had put into making Yi Hongyi understand this? Second older sister is truly silly and adorable. If His Majesty was truly sincere towards second older sister, then why did His Majesty make Moan Empress? Yarrow Moan walked in front of Yarrow Sulwan with great interest and carefully examined her face. Her lips curved in a playful smile. She really was a cockroach that wouldn't die. However, it didn't matter. Thankfully, she didn't hate this kind of cat and mouse game. His Majesty made you Empress? That's impossible. Yarrow Sulwan's eyes widened and her voice changed slightly from excitement. If second older sister doesn't believe me, you can go ask His Majesty. Oh, I almost forgot. Father died in prison. I heard he died very miserably, said Yarrow Moan. Humph, that old thing should have died long ago. Regarding this matter, you should be grateful to Ben Gong. If it weren't for that infected rat, he wouldn't have died so quickly. When mentioning Yarrow Zhenting, Yarrow Sulwan's eyes flashed with disgust. Yarrow Moan was speechless. She suddenly felt a bit bad for Yarrow Enchanting. No matter how unimportant Yarrow Sulwan was, she was still a legitimate daughter. Yarrow Enchanting hadn't treated her unfairly in this lifetime. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but shake her head when she saw Yarrow Sulwan angrily leaving her line of sight. How come Yarrow Sulwan doesn't understand the phrase "a wise man submits to circumstances"? Inside the imperial study, after Yi Hongyi finished writing the imperial edict conferring Yarrow Moen the title of Empress, he was just about to stamp the jade seal when he saw An Bingshan push open the door and walk in. "Reporting to Your Majesty, Imperial Consort Li is outside and asks for an audience." An Bingshan waved his horsetail whisk and reported respectfully. Let her in. Even if he really wanted to eat this woman's flesh and skin, some of Yarrow Sulwan's words weren't without reason. Rather than guarding against her as if she was a thief, it was better to put off their conflict for the time being. At least he would have one less enemy. In reality, they both wanted the same result. It was just that their goals were different. Yarrow Sulwan wanted to preserve her life, while he wanted to preserve the stability of the throne. However, this didn't mean that Yi Hongyi had forgotten how Yarrow Sulwan had forced him back then. This subject consort Sulwan kowtows in salute to Your Majesty. Yarrow Sulwan opened her mouth and bowed. Rise, why have you come here? Didn't Zhen say that if there wasn't anything important, it was best not to enter the imperial study? Yi Hongyi restrained the coldness in his eyes as he spoke indifferently. This subject consort naturally has an important matter, that's why I've come to see Your Majesty. After Yarrow Sulwan got up, she walked over to the dragon desk and lowered her eyes to look at the imperial edict. Your Majesty, you're really going to confer Yarrow Moen the title of Empress? Yarrow Sulwan gulped and looked towards Yi Hongyi in shock. Why not? Yi Hongyi asked disapprovingly. Conferring the title of Empress wasn't something he did on impulse. Your Majesty likes Moen, this subject consort knows, but in the end, Moen is an idiot. If Your Majesty makes an idiot Empress, it will definitely become the laughingstock of our Great Chu. Even the people of Great Chu will feel ashamed. Yarrow Sulwan tried her best to persuade him. The idiot you're talking about obtained the document of eternal friendship with Lulan. You might not necessarily have this ability. Zhen has already decided on this matter, there's no need for you to say anything more. Yi Hongyi glanced at Yarrow Sulwan, then casually picked up the jade seal. Eternal friendship. Your Majesty. This proves that Yarrow Moen isn't an idiot. Otherwise, how could she have that kind of scheming? Emperor. Enough. Yarrow Sulwan, Zhen has agreed to return your freedom and confer you the title of Guifei, but that doesn't mean you have the right to interfere with Zhen's decision. Zhen must make Wen the Empress. You can withdraw. Yi Hongyi looked towards Yarrow Sulwan coldly. But, withdraw. Yi Hongyi roared in a low voice, the darkness in his eyes causing Yarrow Sulwan to once again fall into danger. Yarrow Sulwan was speechless. She knew very well that it was difficult to offend a dragon's might. She turned around, but just as she reached the palace gates, she saw that Yi Hongyi had stamped the jade seal on the imperial edict. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed by someone. Blood flowed out drop by drop. For this empress position, she didn't hesitate to frame Yarrow Morshin, causing Yarrow Morshin to be condemned by everyone. She didn't expect that after Yarrow Morshin died, another Yarrow Moen would come. It was as if these two sisters were born to oppose her. The next day, when Yarrow Moen received the imperial edict, her heart was filled with complicated feelings. This old servant congratulates Your Imperial Highness. His Majesty has spoken. The blueprints for the palace for Your Imperial Highness have already been designed and construction will begin in the next few days. For this period of time, Your Imperial Highness, please stay in Guan Osprey Palace. Once the new palace is finished, Your Imperial Highness can move into the Eastern Palace, said An Bingshan respectfully. But Ben Gong doesn't want to move. I've lived here for too long and I can't bear to leave. How about you tell His Imperial Highness not to build any new palace? Wan doesn't want it. Yarrow Moen blinked as she looked at An Bingshan, her childish voice filled with pleading. This old servant can't make the decision. If your Imperial Highness doesn't have anything else, this old servant will take his leave first. And Bingshan looked at Yarrow Moen's naive appearance and snorted disdainfully. It wasn't a bad thing to have such a fool as Empress. At the very least, she wouldn't care about anything she shouldn't care about. Once An Bingshan left, Yarrow Moen threw the imperial edict to Tingyu in disgust and summoned Yin Shui. This consort wants to see Mingyu tonight. Go arrange it, ordered Yarrow Moen coldly. That night, when Mingyu appeared in Guan Osprey Palace, Yarrow Moen was extremely shocked. How did you get so skinny? Asked Yarrow Moen with a frown when she saw Mingyu's dark expression and sunken eyes. This servant thought that I would never have the chance to see your Imperial Highness again in this lifetime. Now that we've met, Mingyu would like to boldly request something from your Imperial Highness. As Mingyu spoke, she placed her hands on the ground and begged while sobbing. What exactly happened? Yin Shui, help her up so we can talk. Yarrow Moen looked towards Mingyu with heartache. If your Imperial Highness doesn't agree, this servant won't get up even if I die. When Yarrow Moen saw how stubborn Mingyu was, she didn't force it and indicated for Yin Shui to return to her side. Speak. Yarrow Moen nodded slightly. Mingyu knows that she doesn't have much time left to live, but Mingyu is unwilling. Why is he, and Bingshan, able to get away scot-free despite harming countless people? Poor Hong Mai and those sisters died so miserably. This servant only asks that your Imperial Highness allow this servant to see An Bingshan's retribution while I'm still alive. I beg your Imperial Highness. Mingyu begged while sobbing and banged her head on the ground. Chapter 236. This consort owes you for this. Don't worry. This consort will definitely let you see how miserable An Bingshan's fate is while you're still alive. Tell me what happened during this time. Why did you become so weak? Asked Yarrow Moen as she looked at Mingyu worriedly. Replying, Your Highness, while Your Highness and the esteemed prince were on a diplomatic mission to Lulan, Consort Li somehow managed to persuade His Majesty and actually regained his favor. The first thing Consort Li did after regaining favor was find this servant to settle the score. This servant had no choice but to beg An Bingshan to transfer this servant to a new position. Perhaps it was fate, but although this servant managed to escape Consort Li's revenge, something big happened in the refinement room. An Bingshan's pills this time went wrong and those palace maids who were testing the pills died one after another. Even us palace maids in charge of refining the pills were infected with the cold poison. In order to prevent this from reaching His Majesty's ears, not only did An Bingshan secretly transport those palace maids out of the Imperial Palace to be buried, even we were forbidden from leaving the refinement room without his permission. Mingyu knew that she didn't have long to live and wanted to fight An Bingshan, but An Bingshan was afraid that the cold poison would enter his body, so he didn't take a single step into the refinement room. This servant didn't have a chance to do anything. Mingyu sobbed as she told the truth. An Bingshan actually dared to treat people's lives like grass. Mingyu, don't worry. Within 10 days, this consort will take revenge for Hong Mai and those innocent palace maids. I'll make An Bingshan beg for death. As for you, don't go back. Yin Shui, send her away from the Imperial Palace for treatment, ordered Yarrow Moen in a low voice that was as cold as ice. Mingyu thanks Your Highness for your good intentions, but Mingyu can't leave the refinement room. An Bingshan sends people to do a head count every day. If he finds out that this servant is missing, he'll definitely alert the enemy and it won't be beneficial for Your Highness. Mingyu looked towards Yarrow Moen gratefully but refused her good intentions. But if you go back, you'll definitely die, said Yarrow Moen with heartache when she saw how thin Mingyu was. In the end, this servant still owes Hong Mai a life. This servant's death isn't worth regretting. As long as I can personally see An Bingshan executed, this servant can die in peace. Mingyu's gaze was resolute. Yarrow Moen knew that she wouldn't be able to convince Mingyu, so she could only order Yin Shui to send Mingyu back. That night, Yarrow Moen didn't sleep at all. The next day, when Yarrow Moen dragged her tired body out of the inner room, she saw Tingyu rushing in. Your Highness, it's bad. The esteemed prince is shouting that he wants to report An Bingshan to His Majesty. Yin Shui is trying to stop him, but I'm afraid she won't be able to stop him for long. When Ting Yu said this, Yarrow Moen instantly became spirited and rushed out of Guan Osprey Palace to the East Wing. Stop! You guys! Just as Yarrow Mo Wn opened the door, she saw a lump of black stuff throw itself at her. Before Yarrow Mo Wn could react, she felt a dull pain in her forehead, then she fell into darkness and lost consciousness. When Yi Junqing and Yin Shui saw Yarrow Moen lying on the ground with her face covered in ink, they immediately stopped fighting and walked over timidly. Yin Shui, you were the one who threw this inkstone, right? Asked Yi Junqing slowly. Yin Shui didn't reply and lowered her eyes to look at Yi Junqing's ink-stained palm. Yi Junqing subconsciously pulled his hand back into his wide sleeves and his expression turned red. In front of the bronze mirror, Yarrow Moen had her legs crossed on the dressing table. Her jade hands were clenching the white gauze wrapped in ice as she gently pressed it against her forehead. Left side, use more strength. Did Prince not eat? You're not even as strong as a woman. Yarrow Moen shook her head in disgust when she saw Yi Junqing's extremely unwilling expression. Right side, be gentler. It looks like Prince won't even need to eat tomorrow night, said Yarrow Moen angrily. That's enough. Yi Junqing swallowed his anger for a long time before his hair finally stood up in anger. Who is Prince acting like this for? Could it be me, the one who was knocked unconscious and laid on the bed for 4 hours before waking up? Yarrow Moen gripped the white gauze in her hand as she looked towards Yi Junqing resentfully. This prince has already admitted his wrongs. You can't just keep holding on to this matter and not let it go, right? Besides, this prince didn't do it on purpose. When Yi Junqing saw Yarrow Moen's aggrieved expression, he finally became listless. Does Prince think there's any use in saying it wasn't on purpose after killing someone? Asked Yarrow Moen. The problem is that you're not dead yet. Yi Junqing was extremely speechless. Does Prince really want Moen to die? Asked Yarrow Moen with wide eyes. Yi Junqing suddenly felt like keeping his mouth shut was the wisest choice. After 4 hours, Yi Junqing finally understood something. Massaging someone's back really wasn't something a person could do, especially when massaging Yarrow Moen's back. Without strong endurance, one would definitely die from anger midway. Only when it was 10 o'clock in the evening did Yarrow Moen mercifully call for a stop. Does Prince really want An Bingshan to die? Asked Yarrow Moen indifferently as she picked up some food. This prince personally saw him transport the corpses of the 5 palace maids out of the imperial palace. This eunuch is becoming more and more outrageous. Could it be that his life is a life and other people's lives are nothing more than grass? Rebuked Yi Junqing angrily. Actually, if Prince wants to get rid of this eunuch, you can ask Moen for help. He's His Majesty's favorite. Does Prince think that His Majesty will deal with him impartially? Reminded Yarrow Moen with good intentions. You're willing to deal with An Bingshan? Yi Junqing turned to look towards Yarrow Moen. Prince deliberately told Ting Yu that he was going to report An Bingshan in front of His Majesty and then made such a big fuss. It's not that hard to guess why. Yarrow Moen smiled faintly as she looked towards Yi Junqing. No one likes women that are too smart. Muttered Yi Junqing as he blushed when he saw that Yarrow Moen had guessed his intentions. He admitted that everything he did was to attract Yarrow Moen's attention because Yi Junqing believed that as long as Yarrow Moen made a move, An Bingshan wouldn't be able to live. His heart suddenly ached. That's right, women that are too smart will only attract jealousy. This prince didn't mean that. Explained Yi Junqing when he saw that Yarrow Moen was silent. Prince isn't wrong. Women that are too smart are indeed annoying. Thankfully, Moen doesn't expect anyone to like her, replied Yarrow Moen coldly. This prince, if Moen remembers correctly, Prince seems to recognize Clear Wind Monastery's Daoist priest Ju Chen. Yarrow Moen didn't give Yi Junqing a chance to explain and immediately changed the topic. Ju Chen, that swindler, why are you mentioning him? Yi Junqing did recognize him, and he would recognize him even if he was reduced to ashes. If it wasn't for the fact that Ju Chen had the late emperor's death exemption medallion, He would definitely beat Ju Chen until he was looking for his teeth all over the floor. Evil people have their own evil people. Ju Chen is indispensable to deal with and Bingshan. Moen wants to see him tomorrow night. I'll leave this matter to Prince. Moen believes that as long as Prince makes a move, that bastard will only listen obediently. Yarrow Moen's voice was very low, but it was filled with determination. Yi Junqing had no reason to refuse. Even after Yarrow Moen got up to leave, Yi Junqing didn't dare to say another word. However, Ting Yu, who was at the side, started to clear the table in an unfriendly manner. What are you doing? This prince hasn't finished eating yet. Yi Junqing lifted his brows as he looked towards Ting Yu. Ting Yu is your highness's servant. After your highness finishes eating, Ting Yu should be cleaning the table. Ting Yu doesn't care about other people. While Ting Yu was talking, she had already poured all the food on the table into the hogwash can. How could this prince be someone else? Yi Junqing had always thought that after living in Guan Osprey Palace for so long, he had become an indispensable part of it. This servant doesn't know if Wang Yi is someone else, but this servant knows that anyone would like a master who is intelligent and considerate like Niang Niang. Ting Yu's words sounded like she was feeling indignant for Yarrow Mo Wan. Chapter 237. That's right. This prince also likes it, said Yi Junqing loudly. But Prince just. Ting Yu looked towards Yi Junqing in shock. This prince said the wrong thing just now. Can't I correct it now? Yi Junqing looked towards the inner room as he spoke. After interacting with her for a while, Yi Junqing had already figured out Yarrow Moen's temper. He could only go along with her stubbornness. Ting Yu, prepare a new table for the esteemed prince's dinner. Just as Yi Junqing was about to speak, a cold voice came from the inner room. The next day, when Yi Junqing brought Ju Chen to see her, Yarrow Moen felt a bit of regret. Ju Chen, who had been beaten black-eyed, didn't seem like an immortal cultivator at all. Even so, Yarrow Moen still kept Ju Chen in Guan Osprey Palace for an entire night. Inside the imperial study, Yi Hongyi looked towards Qing Long in front of the table. There's still no news. Reporting to your majesty, this subordinate has secretly sent people to investigate everything related to Mystery Country, but none of the people who reported back found anything. Reported Qing Long. Send more people. We must uncover this mysterious country's veil. We want to see, other than Qi and Shu, who else dares to hoard iron or, cough cough. Yi Hongyi suddenly started coughing violently in his fury. Your Majesty, should we summon an imperial doctor? Asked Qing Long worriedly. No need, you can leave. Yi Hongyi waved his hand to dismiss Qing Long. At this time, An Bingshan ran in from the door. Reporting to your Majesty, Daoist Ju Chen is waiting outside. He says he has something to report to your Majesty. An Bingshan bowed respectfully as he spoke in a sharp voice filled with schadenfreude. Ju Chen? Which Ju Chen? Yi Hongyi slumped against the dragon throne, his voice weak. Your Majesty, have you forgotten? It's that Daoist priest that the late emperor thought highly of. He even secretly helped the second prince before. Reminded An Bingshan. It's him. He actually dares to leave Clearwind Monastery? Isn't he afraid that we'll chop off his head? Let him in. Yi Hongyi's eyes lit up with anger. An Bingshan had expected his master to have this kind of reaction and immediately impatiently walked out of the imperial study. At the bottom of the steps, a Taoist priest dressed in a plain robe stood upright. A few strands of silver-white hair fell across his forehead. As the autumn wind blew, the Taoist priest's robe billowed with waves, giving off a sense of calmness and vicissitudes that made people admire him. He had a handsome face and bright eyes, giving off the feeling that he had arrived with the wind. Ju Chen, seeing as we're from the same sect, I'll give you a word of advice. Back then, when the 5 dragons struggle for the throne, you bet on the wrong person and offended quite a few people. One of them is the sovereign of 9-5. I advise you to leave right now, and perhaps you'll be able to preserve your life. An Bingshan walked in front of Ju Chen while waving his horsetail whisk, his narrowed eyes filled with ridicule. Before I sent the message, if senior brother had said those words from the bottom of your heart, Ju Chen would definitely be moved to tears, but now. Ju Chen looked coldly at An Bingshan, the corners of his lips curling into an icy smile. Fine, since you want to court death, senior brother won't be able to stop you. Please, His Majesty is waiting for you. An Bingshan flicked his horsetail whisk, then bent down and extended a hand out of habit. Senior brother has truly been a eunuch for too long that you've forgotten how to walk normally, right? Then Ju Chen will teach you. Watch carefully. Ju Chen raised his horsetail whisk, straightened his back, and strode towards the imperial study. Ju Chen, don't be too pleased with yourself. Since you dared to leave Clearwind Monastery, then I have the ability to make sure that you won't be able to return. As he watched Ju Chen walk into the imperial study, An Bingshan also tried to straighten his back, but when he wanted to walk, he forgot which leg to use first. Inside the imperial study, Yi Hongyi was sitting upright and still, staring at the person in front of him. This humble Daoist Ju Chen kowtows in salute to His Majesty. May His Majesty live for 10,000 years. Ju Chen respectfully stood in front of the dragon table and bowed with his hands clasped in front of him, his expression as calm as still water. His Majesty, if we remember correctly, immortal Daoist Ju Chen once said that we didn't have the fate to sit on this throne in this lifetime. Yi Hongyi looked at Ju Chen coldly, the anger in his heart unable to quell. Back then, this humble Daoist miscalculated the heavenly workings, which was why I helped the Avildor and nearly caused His Majesty to cast pearls before swine. This is truly this humble Daoist's sin, so on the day your Majesty ascended the throne, this humble Daoist punished himself by facing the wall of Clearwind Monastery and only left the monastery a few days ago. Ju Chen's expression was calm, but underneath his strong exterior was a heart that was trembling like a sieve. Is that so? Daoist priest couldn't possibly think that just by saying that you miscalculated the heavenly workings, you would be able to make up for the grave mistake you made that day, right? Ever since Ju Chen had entered the door, Yi Hongyi had been thinking about what kind of punishment he could use to make Ju Chen die an even more miserable death. This humble Daoist knows that he has sinned and does not ask for your Majesty's forgiveness. However, there is one thing that this humble Daoist must say. When this humble Daoist looked at the sky a few days ago, this humble Daoist saw that the stars of calamity had shifted and the purple clouds were covered in dust. Thus, this humble Daoist destroyed his own cultivation to perform a divination for your Majesty and discovered that a great calamity has descended upon the world. If it is not resolved, then His Majesty's life will not be long, said Ju Chen in a very serious manner. How audacious! You actually dare to spread fallacies here and curse the current emperor. Your Majesty, this person's mouth is full of nonsense. This old servant will drag him out and give him a good beating right now. At the side, An Bingshan immediately stepped forward and berated him harshly. That's exactly what we were thinking. Guards. Your Majesty, have you been feeling sleepy and tired recently? Have you been unable to carry out your tasks? Have you been coughing often and have phlegm clogged your throat? Sometimes you are drowsy, sometimes you meditate alone. Especially your right hand, has there been any black blood clogged up in your palm? Just as Yi Hongyi was about to call the guards in, Ju Chen immediately questioned him loudly. His gaze was resolute and his tone was resolute. Spreading fallacies. Your Majesty, you mustn't be deceived by him. Your Majesty, don't forget how he used flowery words in front of the late emperor to swindle away an entire bowl of your blood. The instant he heard Ju Chen's description, An Bingshan was greatly shocked. These symptoms were all symptoms of the poisoned palace maids in the pill refining room. How did he know? Because he was afraid of losing His Majesty's trust, An Bingshan had still delivered the pills to His Majesty despite knowing that they were poisoned. Even though those pills couldn't take His Majesty's life, they still damaged his body. An Bingshan was afraid that this matter would reach His Majesty's ears, which was why he had secretly disposed of the corpses of the palace maids who had been testing the pills. He had forbidden the palace maids who were still alive from entering and leaving the pill refining room. Now that these symptoms had come out of Ju Chen's mouth, and Bingshan was naturally terrified. Whether or not I'm spreading fallacies, I believe that your majesty has your own judgment. Of course, if your majesty doesn't believe in this humble daoist's abilities, this humble daoist is willing to reveal his abilities in front of your majesty to prove my innocence. Zhu Chen straightened his daoist robe and looked towards Yi Hongyi solemnly. Your majesty. And Bingshan was about to speak again, but Yi Hongyi stopped him. All right, we really do want to see just how much daoist priest has grown in these 5 years. We'll order you to divine the esteemed Prince Yi Juanqing's current situation. Yi Hongyi's gaze was cold as he looked towards Zhu Chen suspiciously. The reason he had chosen Yi Juanqing was because Yi Hongyi believed that it was possible for everyone in the imperial palace to collude with Zhu Chen except Yi Juanqing. This was because Yi Hongyi had schemed against Zhu Chen and offered a bowl of blood to imperial father. It was only later that Yi Hongyi found out that because of one sentence from Zhu Chen, Yi Juanqing had been forced to give up another bowl of blood after he left and had been unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. He had almost died. Your Majesty, please wait a moment. After receiving the order, Zhu Chen raised his horsetail whisk with one hand and paced back and forth in the imperial study as he muttered some incantations. After about 5 minutes, Zhu Chen finally stopped. There was sweat on his forehead. Reporting to your Majesty, this humble daoist has divined that the esteemed prince is in the southwest direction of the imperial palace, said Zhu Chen as he panted. The esteemed prince has been temporarily staying in Guan Osprey Palace for a long time. Everyone in the palace knows about this, so do I still need you to calculate, said An Bingshan resentfully. Chapter 238. That's all. Yi Hongyi looked towards Zhu Chen coldly. This humble daoist also calculated that there would be a flood at the 2:45 in the morning, replied Zhu Chen confidently. 2:45 in the morning? Wasn't it just now? Flood? What do you mean? Yi Hongyi looked towards Zhu Chen with interest as his eyes shone with a strange light. Your Majesty, please forgive me. This humble daoist could only calculate that the esteemed prince caused a flood. This humble daoist was unable to calculate the specifics, replied Zhu Chen humbly. Set off for Guan Yu Palace. Yi Hongyi's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. He got up and walked around the dragon table to slowly walk to Zhu Chen's side. If your calculations are accurate, we will let bygones be bygones and allow you to hold a position in the palace. If your calculations aren't accurate. When Zhu Chen saw Yi Hongyi's mischievous smile, his heart was already trembling uncontrollably. However, his face remained calm. After Yi Hongyi left, An Bingshan quickly walked to Zhu Chen's side. How did you know about the symptoms? An Bingshan furrowed his brows and asked through gritted teeth. Senior brother wants to know. Even though he was scared to death, when he saw An Bingshan's panicked expression, Zhu Chen still felt indescribably comfortable. Hurry and tell me, urged An Bingshan impatiently. Zhu Chen won't tell me. Senior brother, don't forget, if it wasn't for senior brother, how could the second prince and Zhu Chen have lost so badly? As he recalled the past, Zhu Chen's eyes shone with intense hatred. That was Empress Yarrow Morshin's idea. Zijia only. An Bingshan instinctively wanted to explain, but he saw that Zhu Chen's smile was eerie and cold. Only what? Adding fuel to the fire? Me. At that time, Yarrow Morshin had intentionally left a way out for the second prince. It was you, eunuch, who was so ruthless that the second prince died under the arrows. This enmity, Zhu Shou will definitely take revenge for the second prince. Now, shouldn't eunuch lead the way? If His Majesty gets anxious, you won't be able to bear the consequences. Zhu Chen glared at him angrily, his voice as cold as ice. Don't get cocky. Zijia doesn't believe that your calculations are that accurate. An Bingshan hatefully flicked his sleeves and hurriedly chased after him. Seeing An Bingshan's slightly unsteady footsteps, Zhu Chen knew that he was afraid. Forget it. If I can kill that bastard An Bingshan, it'll be worth it even if I have to sacrifice my life. Before Yi Hongyi even stepped into Guan Osprey Palace, he heard laughter coming from inside. Ting Yu, quickly come and take a look at this drenched chicken. Haha. Great. You bullied Wana all the time, and now you're getting your retribution. Ha ha ha. Inside the courtyard, Yarrow Moen pointed at the drenched Yi Junqing and laughed. Empress, please behave yourself. Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen with sullen anger in his eyes. His hands were tightly gripping the corners of his clothes that had been soaked in the lake water. Mph, this consort insists on laughing. Ting Yu, Liu Xing, accompany this consort in laughing at him. Such a big person actually fell into the lake. Stupid to death, ha ha ha. With Yarrow Moen's command, Ting Yu and Liu Xing naturally responded and laughed loudly. You've gone too far. Just watch this, prince. Just as Yi Junqing was about to make a move, Yi Hongyi suddenly appeared in Guan Osprey Palace. Junqing no matter how wrong Wana is, she's still our empress, the mother of the nation. You shouldn't have made a move. Yi Hongyi slowly walked over and put his arms around Yarrow Moen. When his long and narrow eyes landed on Yi Junqing, he couldn't help but be shocked. Esteemed prince. How did you end up like this? The moment An Bingshan saw that Yi Junqing was covered in water, he sucked in a breath of cold air. That's right, Junqing, you've always been cautious, so how did you end up in such a sorry state? Yi Hongyi also wanted to know the reason. Replying, Your Majesty, when this subject younger brother passed by Jade Lake, I saw a piece of clothing floating on the lake. At the time, I thought that someone had fallen into the water, so I didn't realize that it was the Empress prank. Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen angrily. Oh, Wana, what's going on? Ever since he had been conferred the title of Empress, Yi Hongyi had never come to Guan Osprey Palace. It wasn't because he didn't miss the lovely person in his arms, but because it was as Ju Chen had said, there were some things that he didn't have the strength to do as he wished. Your Majesty. Wana just wanted to test on Your Majesty's behalf to see if the esteemed prince had sympathy. Mn, he does, explained Yarrow Moen seriously. Your Majesty. When Yi Junqing heard this, his blood instantly surged. Forget it, Junqing wouldn't bicker with Wana, right? That's right, Junqing, take a look and see who this person is. When Yi Hongyi turned to look towards Ju Chen, he saw that Ju Chen was hiding behind An Bingshan. Ju Chen, hurry up and come greet the esteemed prince. Yi Hongyi's gaze turned towards Ju Chen as he secretly observed their reactions. Ahem. This humble daoist Ju Chen kowtows in greeting. Ah. Just as Ju Chen was about to bow, he felt a cold breeze in front of him. In the next second, Ju Chen felt as if the bridge of his nose had collapsed and blood was gushing out. Yarrow Dao, you actually dared to come out of Clear Wind Monastery. You're the one courting death. Yi Junqing didn't say anything else and simply swung his fist. Even though Ju Chen's nose was bleeding, Yi Junqing was still dissatisfied. He took large strides forward and grabbed Ju Chen by the collar. Stop. Yi Junqing, do you still have us in your eyes? Yi Hongyi feigned anger as he roared. Your Majesty, did you forget how he bewitched everyone with his words? How he made Imperial Father let out your and Junqing's blood? It's rare that he dares to leave Clear Wind Monastery. If Junqing doesn't beat him up this time, I swear I'm not a human. Yi Junqing's hair stood up in anger. Taking advantage of Yi Hongyi's momentary daze, he punched Ju Chen again, causing Ju Chen's front teeth to fly out along with blood. Your Majesty, save me. At this moment, Ju Chen finally got a taste of what it felt like to have his teeth knocked out. That's enough, Junqing. Ju Chen is the state preceptor that we invited back. You can't be rude. Yi Hongyi's words shocked everyone. Your Majesty, he's a demonic cultivator, reminded Yi Junqing indignantly. Your Majesty, the esteemed prince is right. This person can't be left alive. And Bingshan never expected that Yi Hongyi would actually make Ju Chen state preceptor. His heart instantly turned cold. All of you, shut up. We naturally have a way to tell if he's a demonic cultivator or not. Ju Chen, right now, Her Majesty the Empress is here, so help her read her fortune. We want to know the Empress' fate, shouted Yi Hongyi. This humble daoist obeys. Ju Chen had no choice but to use his sleeve to wipe away the blood on his face before respectfully walking in front of Yarrow Moen. "Your Majesty." Yarrow Moen reflexively retreated and timidly hid in Yi Hongyi's embrace. Don't be afraid. We're just having him read your fortune. It's fine." As Yi Hongyi spoke, he spread Yarrow Moen's palm in front of Ju Chen. Ju Chen carefully examined Yarrow Moen's palm. Sometimes he raised his brows, sometimes he cried out in surprise. In the end, he actually prostrated on the ground and called out to Phoenix Master. When Yarrow Moen saw Ju Chen's exaggerated actions, her brows couldn't help but twitch. "Ju Chen, what's the meaning of this?" asked Yi Hongyi as he looked towards Ju Chen in confusion. Replying, "Your Majesty, based on Her Majesty the Empress's palm print, Her Majesty is the Phoenix Master with the mandate of heaven. She truly has an extremely wealthy and noble life. Forgive this humble daoist for saying too much, but with Her Majesty the Empress overseeing the inner palace, Great Chu will definitely prosper forever," replied Ju Chen sincerely. "As the Empress, she naturally has an extremely wealthy and noble life," muttered An Bingshan quietly at the side. "Swindler," snorted Yi Junqing. "You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.